The room buzzed with anticipation. A sea of reporters, cameras, and eager spectators all focused on the stage where the unthinkable was about to unfold. At the center of it all stood Elon Musk, the billionaire inventor, entrepreneur, and visionary. His reputation preceded him. He had revolutionized the electric car industry with Tesla, reshaped space travel with SpaceX, and even began laying the groundwork for a future on Mars. But today, his greatest challenge was not the vastness of space or the complexities of sustainable energy. Today, he was about to face off with something entirely different, a math prodigy. The audience was on edge, whispering among themselves as they awaited the appearance of Emma Lee, the 8-year-old girl who had taken the world by storm. Emma was no ordinary child. She was a mathematical genius who had solved equations that would baffle the most brilliant minds. She had been solving calculus problems at 5 years old, and by the time she was 7, she was already tutoring university students. Her abilities had earned her a spot at some of the most prestigious academic institutions, though her parents had decided to homeschool her, wanting to preserve her childhood while nurturing her exceptional gift. Elon Musk versus Emma Lee. The challenge seemed almost absurd, but that was exactly why Elon Musk had proposed it. He had spent years pushing the boundaries of what humans could achieve, and he had witnessed firsthand the incredible potential of young minds. He had always believed that the future of innovation lay with the next generation. And when he heard of Emma, something about her fascinated him. Could a child, someone still so young, really grasp the kinds of abstract concepts he dealt with daily? Could she be his intellectual equal? Or would this be a humbling reminder of how far he still had to go? The stage was set. A large, sleek whiteboard stood before the two challengers. Elon Musk, with his sharp features and trademark black t-shirt, stood confidently, exuding the same calm, calculating energy that had made him a household name. Beside him, Emma Lee was already sitting at a desk, her small frame almost lost in the oversized chair. She wore a simple white dress, her dark hair tied into a neat ponytail, her face serene and focused, as though she were about to solve a simple problem instead of facing one of the most influential figures of the modern age. The audience quieted as the host, a well-known tech journalist, stepped to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "you've all gathered here today to witness something truly extraordinary. On one side, we have Elon Musk, a man whose innovations have changed the course of history. And on the other, we have Emma Lee, a young prodigy whose mathematical genius has already taken the world by storm. The rules are simple. They will take turns solving complex mathematical problems, with each problem becoming progressively harder. The first to solve 5 problems correctly wins." The crowd murmured with excitement, unsure of what to expect. Could Elon Musk, who had led groundbreaking companies and even designed the Hyperloop, be outmatched by a child? It was a spectacle no one could have imagined. Yet here they were, about to witness a battle of intellects that would challenge even the most confident of minds. Emma gave a small, polite nod to the crowd as the host continued, outlining the first problem. A seemingly simple algebraic equation designed to test both speed and precision. Here we go, Elon thought, adjusting his posture. He was used to being in control, to leading the charge in both business and technological innovation. But this was different. The presence of an 8-year-old girl on the opposite side of the stage wasn't just strange. It was exhilarating. "Ready?" the host asked. Elon glanced at Emma, who looked back at him with a quiet confidence. "Ready," she replied softly, her voice calm yet assured. "Let the challenge begin," the host announced, and the clock started ticking. As the first problem appeared on the screen, the audience leaned in, waiting for the spectacle to unfold. Problem 1. Solve for x, 2x plus 5 equals 152x plus 5 equals 152 times plus 5 is equal to 15. The equation was basic, something most students would solve in elementary school. Elon Musk, of course, solved it in an instant. He jotted down his answer with precision, but as he looked over at Emma, she hadn't moved. She was just sitting there, staring at the screen as if waiting for something. Minutes ticked by, and the audience grew restless. Why wasn't she doing anything? And then, as if on cue, Emma lifted her pen, her eyes never leaving the equation, and quickly wrote down her answer. X equals 5. The crowd went silent for a split second, then erupted into applause. But it wasn't the correctness of her answer that stunned everyone. It was the calm, collected manner in which she approached it. There was no frantic scribbling, no signs of stress or anxiety, just pure focus. The host turned to Elon. Elon, you solved it first, but Emma's approach was remarkable. What do you think? Elon, still processing the speed with which Emma had solved the problem, smiled. She's impressive. I didn't expect this to be easy, but I didn't expect her to be this fast. It was clear. This wouldn't be a typical challenge. This wasn't about who could solve the problems the fastest. It was about how each of them approached the problems. Emma's ability to remain calm and focused under pressure had already set her apart from everyone in the room. The next problem was up. This time, it was a slightly more complicated linear equation. Problem 2. Solve for y. 3y minus 4 equals 113y. 4 equals 113, y minus 4 equals 11. Elon wrote down his answer, y equals 5y equals 5y equals 5, within seconds. He turned to Emma, who had already started writing. It was a race now, not just a test of skill, but a test of resilience, of creativity and problem-solving. And once again, within moments, Emma had solved it too. She raised her hand, and the host called on her. Emma, what's your answer? Y equals 5, Emma said, her voice steady. The crowd gasped. Elon couldn't help but laugh under his breath. I've met my match, it seems. The challenge had only just begun, but it was clear that something extraordinary was happening. Emma was no longer just an 8-year-old child participating in a friendly competition. She was turning this into a battle of intellect, one that Elon Musk might not be prepared for. What would you do if you were in Elon's shoes? Could you have expected this from a young child? Or would you have underestimated her too? Share your thoughts below. As the applause from the first round began to fade, the spotlight shifted from the competition to the young girl sitting confidently on the other side of the stage. Emma Lee, the 8-year-old prodigy, had already become the talk of the world. Her calm demeanor and razor-sharp intellect had taken the crowd by surprise, leaving even Elon Musk momentarily speechless. But who exactly was Emma Lee, and how did she come to possess such extraordinary mathematical abilities? Emma was born in a small town just outside of San Francisco, the only child of Maggie and David Lee, 2 high school teachers who had no idea their daughter was destined to change the world. Growing up, Emma's parents always encouraged her to explore her interests, whether it was drawing, playing the piano, or reading books far above her age level. They never pushed her too hard, always prioritizing her happiness and curiosity. But one thing became abundantly clear as Emma grew older. Her mind was wired differently. By the age of 4, Emma could read at a college level. By 5, she had already learned basic algebra, fascinated by the numbers and patterns that seemed to emerge from thin air. Emma's love for math wasn't just about solving equations. It was about discovering the hidden beauty within them. She saw math not as a series of abstract symbols, but as a language that explained the world around her. And when she wasn't solving equations, she was sketching geometric patterns or reading textbooks meant for advanced college students. Her first big breakthrough came when she was just 6 years old. While looking through a book on calculus, Emma stumbled upon a problem that stumped even her parents. It was an integral calculus equation that required deep understanding of limits and differentiation. Most children her age would have stared blankly at the page. But Emma didn't just understand the equation. She solved it in a matter of minutes, her small fingers tracing out the solution on a scrap of paper as if it were second nature. Her parents were astounded, and though they didn't fully understand the magnitude of what Emma had done, they realized that their daughter was no ordinary child. They sought the advice of teachers, mathematicians, and even university professors, all of whom were equally baffled by her abilities. A child with a mind that could comprehend complex calculus before even learning basic multiplication? It seemed impossible. But there was no denying Emma's brilliance. She was offered scholarships to several prestigious universities by the time she was 7, and while her parents were thrilled by the opportunities that awaited her, they also knew they had to proceed cautiously. They decided to homeschool Emma, providing her with the freedom to learn at her own pace while allowing her to experience a normal childhood. They wanted her to feel like a child, not just a genius in a world of adults. Still, Emma wasn't a typical child. She wasn't interested in playing video games or watching cartoons. Instead, she would spend hours studying the works of Einstein, Gödel, and Fermat, or trying to decode the mysteries of quantum physics. Her bedroom was filled with whiteboards, each covered in complex equations and geometric shapes. And when she wasn't studying, she could often be found at the local library, poring over old mathematics journals and texts that most adults couldn't even understand. But what set Emma apart wasn't just her intellectual prowess. It was her ability to stay grounded, to remain humble and focused despite her extraordinary gifts. While other children her age might have been showing off their skills, Emma was the opposite. She was quiet, almost shy, preferring to spend her time immersed in her studies rather than in the spotlight. Her parents, who had always been supportive but protective, had done everything they could to shield her from the pressures that came with being a child prodigy. They had seen too many gifted children burn out or lose their way in the face of overwhelming expectations. As the event continued, Emma sat in her chair, watching Elon Musk with the same calm expression she had worn all throughout the competition. To the audience, it was clear she wasn't intimidated by the man across from her. She was just focused on the task at hand. Emma didn't think of this as a competition. For her, solving mathematical problems was simply what she did. She didn't view Elon Musk as a giant in the world of technology or as the visionary who had revolutionized space travel. To her, he was just another person, one with a lot of interesting ideas, but someone who was about to learn a very important lesson. The future of innovation was in the hands of people like her. It wasn't arrogance. It was just confidence. Emma had grown up in an environment where she was encouraged to think outside the box, to explore new ideas and concepts without fear of failure. If she could solve equations that no one else could, why should she be afraid of a challenge? For a moment, her mind wandered back to her late grandfather, Henry Lee, who had been a brilliant mathematician in his own right. Henry had passed away when Emma was just 5, but his influence had remained with her throughout her life. Emma's earliest memories were of him sitting by the fireplace, discussing the wonders of prime numbers and infinity. He would tell her stories about the great mathematicians and the mysteries of the universe, always encouraging her to follow her curiosity wherever it led. One of his favorite sayings had always been, "Mathematics is the language of the universe." It's not just about numbers. It's about seeing the patterns, understanding the forces that govern the cosmos. Emma's connection to her grandfather was deep, and she often felt as though he was still watching over her, guiding her from beyond. It was his spirit that kept her grounded and reminded her that, no matter how difficult or impossible a problem might seem, there was always a solution, if only you knew how to look for it. As Elon Musk turned his attention back to the whiteboard, Emma remained focused on the task at hand. The audience had already begun to murmur in anticipation for the next round, but Emma wasn't listening to them. She was thinking only about the problem in front of her. The atmosphere in the room had shifted. What began as a light-hearted competition was now something far more significant. The challenge had turned into a high-stakes intellectual duel, where even the slightest slip could cost a point. As the clock ticked on, the audience's anticipation grew. Everyone was now on the edge of their seats, eagerly waiting for the next move in the battle between Elon Musk and Emma Lee. After the first two problems, Elon was ahead, just barely. He had solved both equations quickly, with the confidence of someone who had been building companies and solving impossible problems for years. But there was no denying it. Emma was not only keeping up, she was performing at an entirely different level. Her cool composure was unlike anything Elon had ever seen before. Most adults would have cracked under the pressure of performing in front of a global audience. But Emma? She was as calm as if she were sitting in her living room, solving puzzles on a lazy afternoon. It was impossible not to admire her. Elon's thoughts began to race. As a man who prided himself on problem-solving, he had learned to approach every challenge with an open mind. But he couldn't help but wonder, who was this child and what was driving her? Elon's mind returned to his own childhood. He had been a curious and somewhat quiet child, always fascinated by how things worked, whether it was the mechanics of a toy or the way computers communicated. But unlike Emma, Elon had always struggled with the academic structure. School was never easy for him. He remembered being teased for his interest in books and science, finding solace only in the world of ideas, not in the playground. His focus had always been more on big ideas, the future, technology, space exploration, rather than the kind of academic precision Emma seemed to wield with such ease. Was that the difference? Elon mused. Emma had no distractions. She was purely dedicated to understanding the world through numbers, patterns, and logic. He, on the other hand, had always been pulled in 100 different directions, trying to launch rockets, build electric cars, and figure out how to change the world. Perhaps Emma had the luxury of time. Time to focus on one thing. Time to hone her skill until it became an unstoppable force. He couldn't help but feel a deep respect for her. Elon had always believed that the future of innovation depended on the next generation. And Emma? She was a living example of that future. The next problem appeared on the screen, breaking Elon's train of thought. Problem 3. Solve for z. 5z2 minus 3z plus 2 equals 0. 5z caret 2. 3z plus 2 equals 0. 5z2 minus 3z plus 2 equals 0. A quadratic equation. Not simple, but not insurmountable. Elon quickly began working through the solution in his head, his sharp mind running through the steps with ease. He knew the formula for solving quadratic equations by heart. He could already see the roots in his mind. Meanwhile, Emma sat still, staring at the equation, her fingers gently tapping the surface of her desk. The pressure was mounting, and the audience held their collective breath. For the first time, the equation wasn't something she could immediately solve with the same level of ease. Quadratic equations were tricky for any mathematician, even for someone with a mind like Emma's. For the briefest moment, doubt crept into her mind, but only for a moment. She leaned forward, recalibrating her approach. Instead of rushing, she began to break the problem down step by step, solving it with methodical precision. The crowd watched as she wrote down the solution. First the discriminate, then the calculation for the roots, and finally, with a soft, almost imperceptible smile, Emma raised her hand. "I've got it," she said, her voice steady and calm. Elon glanced at her, and then at the whiteboard, where she had already written down her solution. She had solved it the long way, step by step, and with clarity. Emma's solution was correct. And once again, she had done it without breaking a sweat. The audience exploded into applause. Elon, for the first time in the competition, felt a flicker of doubt. The host turned to Elon. "Elon, what do you think? It looks like Emma has really mastered that one." Elon smiled, his admiration for the young girl only growing. "She's impressive. But I'm not out of this yet," he said with a grin. His confidence had been tested, but he wasn't ready to concede just yet. If anything, this challenge was spurring him on. There was something in Emma's unwavering focus that stirred his competitive spirit. The host now turned to Emma. "Emma, what's your secret? How do you stay so calm under pressure, especially when facing someone like Elon?" Emma blinked, clearly caught off guard by the question. But after a brief pause, she smiled softly and answered, "I don't think about pressure. I just focus on the problem. Everything else can wait." Her simplicity was profound. To Emma, math wasn't a competition, and the pressure of an audience didn't faze her. She was doing what she loved, what she was born to do, and the rest of the world could just fade into the background. As the competition continued, it became clear that the stakes were rising. Elon Musk and Emily were locked in an intellectual battle that seemed more like an exhibition of pure genius than a traditional contest. The problems grew harder, and the tension in the room escalated. But the deeper tension was something more subtle. Elon began to question his own approach to problem-solving. Emma's calm, methodical way of working was a stark contrast to his own often chaotic, high-stakes methods. Could it be that his approach, the same one that had led him to revolutionize industries, wasn't always the best? Emma's way seemed slower, more deliberate. She didn't rush to a solution, but rather took the time to understand the problem fully before beginning the work. She didn't rely on brute force intelligence or grand ideas. Instead, she trusted her ability to think logically and carefully. It was a quiet revelation, one that caught Elon off guard. The tension in the room was palpable as the competition reached a new level of intensity. The audience, which had initially been caught up in the novelty of the contest between Elon Musk and an 8-year-old math prodigy, was now riveted. They weren't just watching a challenge between two individuals. They were witnessing a deeper philosophical battle unfold between two approaches to problem solving. The next problem flashed on the screen. Problem 4. Solve the system of equations. 3x plus 2y equals 124x minus y equals 53x plus 2y equals 12 / 4x. Y equals 53x plus 2y equals 124x minus y equals 5. A system of equations, more complex than anything they had encountered so far. A challenge for anyone, regardless of their experience. Elon leaned forward, his mind already racing through the solution. The method for solving a system of linear equations was simple for him: substitution or elimination. He preferred elimination, so he quickly began working through the process in his head, mentally eliminating variables to arrive at the solution. But as the clock ticked down, he noticed something unexpected. Emma had not yet written a thing. Instead, Emma was leaning back in her chair, her fingers tapping gently on her chin as if she were simply mulling over a thought, rather than working through a complex math problem. For a moment, Elon felt a flicker of uncertainty. Was she stuck? Or was she just taking a more thoughtful approach? It was hard to tell. He glanced over his shoulder to see the audience watching both of them intently, but none of it mattered. He was too focused on the task ahead. He scribbled down the first few steps of his solution. Y equals 4x minus 5y equals 4x. 5y equals 4x minus 5 was the first substitution he needed. With a few more steps, he would have it. But then he saw Emma's pen move. In one smooth motion, Emma wrote down both equations and then, with incredible precision, began solving them. She didn't rush. There was no frantic scribbling. She took her time, methodically working through the problem as if she were painting a masterpiece rather than solving an equation. Elon couldn't help but notice the difference. His approach was instinctive, almost reflexive, like a rush of adrenaline as he solved each part of the equation. But Emma? She approached the same problem like a chess grandmaster, carefully weighing each move. Emma's method was simple but elegant. She began with substitution, just as Elon had, but where he had rushed ahead, she took time to check each step and ensure she wasn't missing any nuances. She carefully solved for y, then substituted that back into the first equation. In a matter of minutes, she had the solution in front of her. She raised her hand, and the host immediately called on her. Emma's voice rang out, calm and composed. The solution is x equals 3, y equals 1, x equals 3, y equals 1, x equals 3, y equals 1. The room was quiet. Elon glanced down at his own whiteboard, where he had the same solution, though his process had been a whirlwind in comparison. Correct, the host confirmed, and once again, the audience burst into applause. Emma had solved the system of equations with the grace and precision of someone far beyond her years. Elon nodded in acknowledgement. The host turned to Elon. Elon, you were fast, but Emma's approach was so deliberate. What do you think? Elon leaned back in his chair, letting out a small, almost imperceptible sigh. He wasn't defeated, not by a long shot, but something had changed. I think she's got a very different way of thinking about problems, he said. She's not rushing to get to the answer. She's focused on the process itself. The audience seemed to hang on Elon's words. They were used to hearing Elon talk about rockets, electric cars, and Mars, but now they were hearing him reflect on something far more personal, the nature of problem-solving itself. Emma, meanwhile, sat quietly, her eyes on the next problem that appeared on the screen. She wasn't looking for praise or recognition. She was already thinking ahead, contemplating the next challenge. Problem 5. Solve the equation for TTT. T3 minus 3T2 plus 2T equals 0T caret 3, 3T squared plus 2T equals 0T, 3 minus 3T2 plus 2T equals 0. It was a cubic equation, a little more complicated, a little more abstract. But once again, the challenge seemed to excite Elon. He loved working with higher-level equations. He was ready. He knew the first step: factor the equation. T2 minus 3T plus 2 equals 0T, T squared minus 3T plus 2 equals 0t, t2 minus 3t plus 2 equals 0. He smiled to himself. This was his territory. As he worked through the problem, Emma was still quiet. She took a deep breath, then scribbled down the equation. Her pen moved slowly, but decisively. She was thinking. It wasn't that she was slow, quite the opposite, but she was taking her time to digest every part of the equation before proceeding. Elon, by contrast, was already on his second step, racing ahead in his mind. But his mind was filled with potential distractions. There was the audience. There was the pressure of the challenge. Emma didn't have any of those distractions. As the clock ticked down, Elon's solution appeared on the board. T equals 0, t equals 1, t equals 2, t equals 0, t equals 1, t equals 2, t equals 0, t equals 1, t equals 2. It was right, but he was feeling the pressure. His hands were a little sweaty, and he could feel the weight of the eyes on him. His heart rate was rising. The ticking clock, the growing crowd, the challenges ahead. All of it was starting to add up. Emma, on the other hand, had already written down her solution with her calm, steady hand. The crowd held its breath as she raised her hand to signal she was finished. The solution is t equals 0, t equals 1, t equals 2, t equals 0, t equals 1, t equals 2, t equals 0, t equals 1, t equals 2. Elon couldn't help but smile. It was uncanny how effortless Emma made it all look. She had solved the same problem, perhaps even faster than him, but without the rush, without the visible strain. The host turned to Elon again. Elon, you were quick, but Emma's composure is unmatched. How does it feel to face off against someone so young and so talented? Elon paused for a moment, looking at Emma with newfound respect. I have to admit, he said slowly, she has a different approach. It's a good reminder for me. I've spent years trying to do things fast, trying to revolutionize industries and push forward. But sometimes, the real solution comes from being patient, from taking your time to understand the problem. It was a moment of reflection, one that the audience could feel deeply. Elon Musk, the man who had defied conventional wisdom in nearly every aspect of his life, was admitting that maybe there was something to be learned from the calm, steady way that Emma approached problems. The room went silent as the next challenge appeared on the screen. But for the first time that evening, the battle between Elon Musk and Emma Lee was no longer just about winning. It was about something deeper, an exchange of ideas, a recognition of each other's strengths, and a realization that there was always more to learn, no matter how much you thought you already knew. The atmosphere in the competition hall had shifted. What began as a simple, albeit extraordinary, contest of mathematical prowess between Elon Musk and Emma Lee had taken on a deeper, more introspective tone. The audience was no longer just watching a competition. They were witnessing a profound exchange of ideas. A battle of minds was unfolding, but it was less about who would win and more about how each competitor was learning from the other. Elon Musk, who had always relied on his rapid decision-making and high-speed problem-solving, was starting to recognize the value in Emma Lee's slower, more deliberate approach. Meanwhile, Emma, whose focus had always been on understanding the process rather than the outcome, was beginning to sense that sometimes, moving at a faster pace wasn't a flaw, it could actually unlock new solutions and perspectives. It was a fascinating moment of intellectual growth, one that few people had the privilege of witnessing firsthand. But just as the competitors seemed to settle into their own rhythms, something unexpected happened. The next challenge appeared on the screen, and for the first time, there was an audible gasp from the audience. It wasn't just the complexity of the problem. It was the sheer magnitude of it. The equation was unlike anything either Elon or Emma had ever encountered before. It wasn't a typical mathematical problem. It was a nonlinear, multidimensional problem that involved not only equations but also graph theory, chaos theory, and even elements of quantum mechanics. The kind of problem that, even for the most brilliant minds, was practically unsolvable without advanced computational tools. The type of problem that people in the scientific community only dreamed about solving. Problem 6. Find the solution to the following equation, which spans multiple dimensions. Sigma n equals 1 infinity, sin, n pi, n2, plus lim x infinity, e minus x goes, x, backslash sum underscore n equals 1 caret backslash infinity backslash left backslash frac backslash sine n backslash pi the n squared backslash right plus backslash lim underscore x backslash to backslash infinity backslash left e caret x v backslash cosine x backslash right sigma n equals 1 infinity n2 sine n pi plus limx infinity e minus x goes x. Elon stared at the problem in disbelief. His mind, which had easily processed the previous questions, now felt like it had been thrown into a maze of mathematical impossibilities. The formula was an amalgamation of several complex mathematical theories, each one a challenge on its own. For a moment, Elon was silent. He knew his limits. This was not something anyone could solve on the fly, not even someone with his vast intellect and experience. He thought about using his engineering mindset, simplifying the terms, trying to break it down in ways that made sense. But the layers of abstraction were overwhelming. The more he looked at it, the less he could make sense of it. Emma, on the other hand, didn't seem to hesitate. The audience watched her closely, trying to read her expression. Was she intimidated by the complexity of the problem? Was she going to give up? She sat perfectly still, her pen resting on her notepad, as she read through the equation. She didn't fidget. She didn't look flustered. She just stared at it. Elon's usual method for tackling problems was to dive right in, break things apart, and identify a pathway. But this problem wasn't like anything he had faced before. For a moment, he felt completely out of his depth. Was this the turning point? The moment when he would have to admit that even someone like him, with all his experience and intellect, couldn't always solve the world's toughest problems? Was this the moment when Emma, the 8-year-old prodigy, would prove that her deliberate and careful method wasn't just a difference in style, it was a superior way of tackling challenges? Elon's mind raced. He knew the solution wasn't immediately obvious. It wasn't just about raw intelligence. It was about finding the right approach to the problem. Maybe there was a way to solve it, but it would take time and thought. As much as he wanted to push forward, he found himself wondering if slowing down and considering the problem from a different angle was actually the key. Emma took a deep breath, her fingers lightly touching the paper. The audience's eyes were fixed on her, waiting for any sign of movement. The problem before her was a colossal one, but Emma had faced challenges of similar complexity before. Her talent lay in her ability to break down the most complicated problems into their fundamental parts. Her mind wasn't fixated on solving the problem outright. She was more interested in understanding its structure. What was the question really asking? What were the underlying principles that tied everything together? As she traced the formula with her pen, Emma began to see it not as a jumble of terms but as a puzzle. Pieces that, if understood individually, would eventually fit together. The audience watched in stunned silence as Emma's fingers moved quickly but gracefully across her notepad. In the span of a few minutes, she had drawn out a series of diagrams, equations, and visual representations that began to make sense of the problem. The equations on the page began to tell a story. Suddenly, Elon was jolted from his own thoughts. He glanced over at Emma. What had she done? How was she so composed? She wasn't even using a calculator or complex tools. She was solving this by hand, in a way that seemed almost old-fashioned, like a mathematician from a past century. Emma, for her part, had begun to rewrite the equation in a way that made it much more comprehensible. She wasn't solving every part at once. Instead, she was breaking it down into manageable pieces, finding patterns, and simplifying the problem bit by bit. The crowd gasped as Emma raised her hand, her solution already written down. Elon looked at her with a mixture of admiration and disbelief. How was it possible? How had she done it? The host, visibly excited, turned to Emma. Emma, you've finished. Can you share your solution with us? Emma stood up, her expression still calm, and presented her work to the audience. The solution is, she paused for a brief moment, not just a solution. It's a series of approximations, each one leading closer to the true answer. But the key is to understand the relationship between the sine function and the exponential decay at infinity. Once you understand how these functions behave, it's about identifying the limits and managing them accordingly. The host, looking at Elon, added, and it seems you've arrived at a solution using an entirely different method. Elon, what are your thoughts? Elon stood up slowly, his mind still processing Emma's approach. She hadn't just solved the equation. She had reframed it in a way that made it comprehensible without resorting to computational shortcuts. It was a kind of brilliance he had never expected to see in someone so young. Finally, Elon spoke, a slow smile spreading across his face. I've learned a lot tonight. This isn't just about solving problems. It's about seeing the problem in a completely new light. The problem that had stumped Elon Musk, the celebrated innovator and CEO of SpaceX and Tesla, had been solved by Emma Lee with the ease of someone working through an afternoon math puzzle. And the most surprising part of it all? Emma hadn't used any high-tech tools, calculators, or advanced computational methods. Instead, she had simply broken down the problem into smaller, manageable pieces using basic principles and logic. It was the epitome of old-school math mastery, a sharp contrast to Elon's usual high-speed, technology-driven approach. The crowd was silent for a long moment. They had just witnessed something extraordinary. In one corner of the room, Elon stood, his arms crossed and a thoughtful expression on his face. In the other, Emma sat, her calm demeanor betraying nothing of the intensity of the moment. The two competitors had just crossed a threshold, not one of competition, but of mutual respect. Emma smiled, the soft glow of accomplishment in her eyes. Thank you, Elon. But really, it's just about understanding how the pieces fit together. Once you see the pattern, it's all about breaking it down into smaller parts. As the applause began to swell, Elon walked over to Emma. The audience followed his every move. Elon had always been a man of few words, but in that moment, it was clear he had something important to say. Emma, Elon said, his voice steady but sincere. I have to admit, I underestimated you. That last problem. It was beautiful. I've never seen anyone approach a challenge quite like that before. Emma smiled, the soft glow of accomplishment in her eyes. Thank you, Elon. But really, it's just about understanding how the pieces fit together. Once you see the pattern, it's all about breaking it down into smaller parts. Elon nodded thoughtfully. He knew exactly what she meant. In his world, innovation came from piecing together ideas in unexpected ways. But Emma's way of thinking was different. Where he saw fast solutions, she saw understanding. Where he relied on technology, she relied on pure mental clarity. As the next challenge flashed onto the screen, the tension between Elon and Emma reached a new level. The competition had long passed the point of mathematical puzzles. It had become a question of mindsets. Elon, always in motion, always pushing forward, was now questioning whether speed truly equated to success. And Emma, who had always approached her work with quiet precision, was wondering if there was something to be gained from working at a faster pace. The next problem was simpler, at least on the surface. Problem 7. Solve for triple x in the equation. x2 plus 4x plus 4 equals 0 x caret 2 plus 4x plus 4 is equal to 0 times 2 plus 4x plus 4 is equal to 0. A basic quadratic equation. The solution was clear. Factor it into x plus 2, 2 equals 0, x plus 2, caret 2 equals 0, x plus 2, 2 equals 0, and solve for x equals minus 2x equals dash 2x equals minus 2. For most, this would be a straightforward exercise. But the challenge wasn't in the math itself, it was in the time. The host turned to the competitors. This problem must be solved in just 30 seconds, the host announced, his voice ringing with excitement. Elon immediately sat up straighter, his competitive spirit ignited. 30 seconds? That was nothing. He had solved thousands of equations in his career, and this one would be no different. He quickly ran through the formula in his head, his fingers already poised to write. With one swift motion, he scribbled down the answer x equals minus 2x equals dash 2x equals minus 2. Elon's solution was quick, efficient, and correct, but Emma wasn't in any hurry. Emma, by contrast, didn't rush. She sat back, her eyes focused on the equation, her mind working methodically. The clock ticked on, but Emma was in no rush. She wasn't looking to win a race. She was looking to understand every aspect of the problem. The audience was on edge, watching the young girl approach the equation as if it were a delicate piece of art. As the seconds ticked away, Emma didn't even pick up her pen. She stared at the equation, breaking it down in her mind, making sure there were no hidden details she might miss. To her, the answer was obvious, but her approach was one of total immersion. She didn't want to just solve the problem. She wanted to absorb it completely. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Emma wrote down her answer: x equals minus 2x equals dash 2x equals minus 2. The host looked between the two competitors. Both of you have the correct answer. Elon, your speed was incredible, but Emma, your approach, it was something else. Elon smiled wryly. Speed isn't everything, is it? Emma looked up at him with a calm smile. It's not about speed. It's about precision. Sometimes, you need to slow down to get it right. The clock for the final challenge had run out, and the competition was officially over. It had been an extraordinary contest, one that had showcased both Elon Musk's fast-paced brilliance and Emma Lee's slow, deliberate genius. The room was filled with the sounds of applause, but there was a noticeable sense of admiration in the air. Elon Musk, the man who had revolutionized the way we think about technology, space, and the future, had just faced off with an 8-year-old girl who had made him rethink everything he knew about problem-solving. The two competitors met in the center of the stage, exchanging glances that spoke volumes. They had just learned something about themselves and about each other. Elon had always been a man of action, driven by the urgency of innovation. But in his time with Emma, he had seen the power of taking a step back, of letting the problem breathe, of finding the pattern before charging ahead. Emma, on the other hand, had learned from Elon's energy and passion. She had seen firsthand that speed, when used wisely, could lead to powerful results. But she had also seen how important it was to maintain the patience and focus that had defined her success. Speed was an advantage, but so was taking the time to understand. As they stood side by side, the host turned to them with a smile. What a night it's been. Elon, Emma, what do you think you've learned from each other? Elon looked at Emma, his expression thoughtful. I've learned that sometimes, slowing down is the best way to move forward. It's easy to get caught up in the rush of things, but real solutions come when you take the time to understand the problem first. Emma nodded, her eyes shining. And I've learned that sometimes it's okay to speed things up. Sometimes you need to act quickly, especially when time is running out. The host smiled, sensing the shift in the room. So, it's safe to say that you've both won tonight? Elon and Emma shared a look, and then both nodded. Yes, Elon said with a grin. We've both won. Engagement. The competition between Elon Musk and Emma Lee wasn't just about math, it was about approach. Elon embraced speed, while Emma embraced precision. Which approach do you prefer when solving problems? The fast-paced route or the careful, methodical approach? Or do you think a balance between the two is best? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The final challenge had ended, but the impact of what had happened between Elon Musk and Emma Lee was far from over. The audience had witnessed more than just a competition. It was a masterclass in intellectual humility, the power of different problem-solving approaches, and the beauty of a shared learning experience. It was a moment that resonated with everyone who had seen it. In the days that followed, news outlets were abuzz with reports on the event. The headlines were everywhere, from mainstream news websites to social media, sparking debates, discussions, and even a few viral memes. People were fascinated by the thought of Elon Musk, one of the most forward-thinking minds in the world, going head-to-head with an 8-year-old girl in a math competition. But what truly captivated the public was the deeper story that emerged. It wasn't about who won. It was about how two very different ways of thinking could come together to produce something greater than either could accomplish alone. Elon and Emma had become the talk of the town, and people from all walks of life were rethinking the way they approached problem-solving. A few days after the competition, Elon sat in a quiet corner of his office, reflecting on the events that had unfolded. His mind was still buzzing from the experience. He had spent so many years thinking about efficiency, speed, and innovation. But he now understood that sometimes the most efficient path wasn't the quickest one. Sometimes it was the most deliberate approach that yielded the most valuable results. As he sat back in his chair, his assistant knocked on the door. Mr. Musk, Emma Lee is on the line. She says she has something she wants to discuss with you. Elon raised an eyebrow. Emma Lee. the girl who had turned his world upside down just a few days ago. With a grin, he motioned for his assistant to put the call through. "Hello, Elon?" Emma's voice came through clearly. "Emma, how's it going?" Elon replied, leaning forward in his chair. "I just wanted to say thank you for everything," she said, her tone warm but measured. "I've been thinking a lot about what we both learned, and I thought you might be interested in talking more about how we can combine the two approaches, speed and precision, into one." Elon raised an eyebrow again. "You're thinking about combining them, huh? That's an interesting idea." "Yeah," she said, sounding excited. "I think if we can figure out when to move fast and when to slow down, it might make us both even better at solving problems. I've been working on a project, nothing big yet, but it's about creating a system that can help people find that balance. What do you think?" Elon leaned back in his chair, thoughtful. He had been doing a lot of thinking himself. Emma's idea wasn't just a smart observation. It was a potential game changer. Elon was always looking for ways to push the boundaries of what was possible, but the idea of slowing down to go faster was something he hadn't fully embraced until now. What if he could take Emma's approach and incorporate it into his high-speed world of innovation? "Emma, that sounds amazing," he said, his voice full of genuine admiration. "I think you might be onto something. Let's talk more about this. Maybe we can build something together, take the best of both worlds, and see what happens." Within weeks, the media frenzy that had surrounded the competition faded into the background, but something bigger was happening behind the scenes. Elon and Emma began meeting regularly, not just to discuss mathematics or engineering, but to explore the intersection of their two vastly different approaches to problem solving. Elon, with his engineering mindset and affinity for rapid action, and Emma, with her deep understanding of how to slow down, analyze, and approach challenges methodically, found a powerful synergy when they worked together. They began collaborating on a project that merged their distinct strengths, speed and precision. The concept was simple, yet profound. A software tool that could help people quickly assess problems, identify patterns, and choose the most effective approach based on the situation at hand. The software, still in its early stages, was designed to work as an adaptive decision-making tool, using artificial intelligence to help users determine when to move fast and when to slow down. It would apply not only to mathematical problems, but also to real-world challenges, everything from business decisions to personal dilemmas. Elon was particularly excited about the possibilities. He saw this as a new way to approach innovation, a tool that could provide both speed and precision in one package, tailored to the needs of each individual or organization. The project was ambitious, but it felt like the perfect next step in his journey. As the partnership grew, so did Emma's role in it. Initially, she had been content with simply being a student of knowledge, absorbing what she could from her mentors and teachers. But now, Emma found herself in a position where she was teaching, not just Elon Musk, but the world. She began giving talks about balancing speed and precision, an approach that, she explained, could be applied to much more than math. It was a philosophy she believed could change the way people lived, worked, and innovated. During one of her first public speaking engagements after the competition, she spoke to a room full of entrepreneurs, engineers, and students. "When we rush to get to the answer, we often miss the best solution," she told the crowd. "But if we spend too much time thinking and not enough time acting, we can miss opportunities. It's about finding the balance and knowing when to shift between the two." The audience, which had once dismissed Emma as simply a child prodigy, now saw her as a thought leader in her own right. Emma's wisdom had the power to inspire not just kids who loved math, but adults who had long since stopped thinking about the world in such a thoughtful, intentional way. Back at SpaceX, Elon often found himself thinking back to the competition and the lessons that had emerged from it. He had spent years in the fast lane, always pushing forward, always striving for bigger and better. But now, he was learning to take a step back, to pause, to reflect, and to carefully assess the situation before charging ahead. It was no small thing for a man like Elon Musk to acknowledge that sometimes slowing down was the key to going farther, faster. And as he reflected on his partnership with Emma, he realized something else: humility. He wasn't the smartest person in the room anymore. Not always, at least. And that realization had made him a better thinker, a better innovator, and a better human being. Months passed since the competition, and the collaboration between Elon Musk and Emily had grown from a simple conversation into something far bigger, a groundbreaking initiative that promised to change the way the world approached problem-solving. They called it CogniX, a revolutionary platform designed to help individuals, teams, and businesses harness both speed and precision in their decision-making processes. The project was born from the recognition that the best solutions were often found not in rushing toward an answer, but in knowing when to act quickly and when to deliberate deeply. It was a marriage of Elon's fast-paced, tech-driven approach and Emma's patient, thoughtful method of processing information. CogniX was designed to empower users with the ability to gauge the right balance for each situation, using an intelligent algorithm that analyzed data, context, and individual needs. Elon had seen the potential for such a system in his work at SpaceX, where decisions often had to be made in real time under intense pressure. Emma, for her part, saw the idea as a way to help others develop the same clarity and understanding that had made her a math prodigy in the first place. The software wasn't just an answer to a problem. It was a tool to help people rethink the process of solving problems itself. Now, after months of research, coding, and collaboration, CogniX was ready to be unveiled to the public. The day of the launch arrived, and with it, the kind of media spectacle that only someone like Elon Musk could orchestrate. The press conference was held in a sleek, high-tech auditorium in the heart of Silicon Valley, with a massive screen behind the podium showing the logo of CogniX in bold, futuristic letters. The room was filled with reporters, investors, and curious onlookers, all eager to learn more about the new platform. Elon and Emma stood side by side at the podium, a visual representation of the partnership that had led to this moment. Emma, looking poised and confident, was no longer the shy, quiet child from the competition. She had grown into her role as a thought leader, her voice steady and full of conviction. Elon, as always, was calm and composed, his trademark enthusiasm tempered by the seriousness of the occasion. As the lights dimmed and the crowd quieted, Elon took the microphone. "Good afternoon, everyone," he began, his voice echoing across the room. "Today marks the beginning of something new, something that will change the way we think about problem-solving, decision-making, and, frankly, the way we approach life itself. I'm proud to introduce to you CogniX, a platform designed to help people solve problems faster, smarter, and with greater precision than ever before." The crowd murmured in excitement. Elon gestured to the screen behind him, which displayed a demo of the CogniX platform in action. The software, which could be accessed via both desktop and mobile devices, used a sophisticated AI system to guide users through complex decision-making processes. CogniX doesn't just answer questions, Elon continued. It helps you figure out how to ask the right questions and when to act. It combines speed and precision, two things I've spent my entire career trying to master, into one seamless experience. But what makes CogniX unique isn't just the technology. It's the people behind it. And one of those people is right here with me today. He turned to Emma, who smiled warmly at the audience. Emma Lee is a brilliant mind, one who has taught me as much as I've taught her. She has shown me that sometimes the best way forward is to slow down, to truly understand a problem before charging ahead. And that is why CogniX is as much her creation as it is mine. The crowd broke into applause. Emma's face flushed with pride, but she maintained her composure as she stepped forward to speak. "Thank you, Elon," she said, her voice carrying with confidence. "I've spent a lot of time thinking about how we approach challenges. When I first started solving problems, I focused on precision, on understanding every detail before moving forward. But over time, I realized that speed could be just as important when it's used at the right moment. And that's what CogniX aims to do. It helps you find the balance between both. Because sometimes, thinking fast is just as important as thinking deeply." The audience was riveted. They had expected the usual Silicon Valley presentation, a flashy demo, a few grand promises, but what they were hearing was different. Emma wasn't just pitching a product. She was sharing a philosophy, a new way of thinking about problem solving. After the speeches, the crowd eagerly turned their attention to the demo. A live simulation was set up on the large screen, showing two different scenarios. One was a business decision involving a startup trying to decide whether to invest in a risky new technology. The other was a scientific problem in which a research team had to choose between two competing methods for developing a sustainable energy source. In both cases, Cogniex quickly analyzed the context, pulled in relevant data, and made suggestions about how to approach the problem. In the first scenario, it emphasized the need for quick action, but only after evaluating the potential risks and rewards. In the second scenario, it recommended a more methodical approach, advising the team to take a step back and assess the long-term implications before moving forward. The room was silent as the AI ran its analysis. The software wasn't just presenting answers, it was providing actionable strategies. The speed and precision of the decisions were in perfect harmony. As the press conference concluded, the feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Journalists and analysts were impressed by the innovative nature of Cogniex, but what stood out to them most was the philosophy behind it. This wasn't just another AI-driven product. This was a tool that reflected the way Elon and Emma had learned to think. Fast, but thoughtful. Decisive, but careful. Over the next few weeks, Cogniex began to gain traction. Users from all industries, business leaders, engineers, students, and even educators started integrating it into their daily lives. People began to realize that the software wasn't just about solving problems faster or more accurately. It was about rethinking the entire process of decision-making. Users could now take a more holistic approach to the problems they faced, integrating speed and precision in a way that maximized their potential. As Cogniex began to transform how people solve problems, Elon and Emma found themselves more connected than ever before. Their work together had evolved from a competition into a full-blown collaboration, one that was shaping the future of decision-making and innovation. For Elon, it was a humbling experience. He had always been the one pushing for faster solutions, faster products, faster results. But working with Emma had taught him the value of slowing down to understand the problem at a deeper level. The world didn't always need another breakthrough invention. Sometimes, it just needed the right approach to finding solutions. For Emma, the partnership had been a dream come true. She had learned to embrace speed in ways she never imagined, but she had also remained true to the core principles that had guided her success: precision, clarity, and an unwavering commitment to understanding. Together, they had created something that transcended both speed and precision. It was a tool for the future, one that would continue to evolve as more people discovered how to harness both elements in their own lives. And perhaps, most importantly, it was a reminder that the best solutions often come when we listen to each other, learn from each other, and embrace the differences that make us who we are. As the months passed, Cogniex began to make waves beyond Silicon Valley. What started as a small idea between Elon Musk and an 8-year-old prodigy had now become a movement, a global shift in the way people approached problem-solving. The world's top companies, educators, and even governments started adopting Cogniex to enhance their decision-making processes. The early feedback was overwhelmingly positive. Users across various industries found that the software didn't just improve their ability to solve problems, it made them more mindful of the process itself. Emma and Elon were now in constant communication, refining the platform based on user feedback and new technological advancements. They traveled the world, holding talks, workshops, and panels about the importance of finding the right balance between speed and precision. Together, they were building a new future, one where innovation wasn't just about the next big breakthrough, but about a new way of thinking that combined efficiency and thoughtfulness. But as their influence grew, so did the challenges. They soon realized that launching a product like Cogniex was only the first step in a much bigger journey. Their collaboration had to adapt to the needs of a global audience, each with their own unique set of challenges, cultural differences, and ways of thinking. One of the biggest tests for Cogniex came when a major global corporation, Meditech, decided to integrate the platform into its decision-making process. Meditech was a multinational healthcare company with operations in over 100 countries, and their decision-making involved complex processes that ranged from medical research to regulatory compliance. If Cogniex could work for Meditech, it would prove the system's capability to scale to large, multifaceted organizations. However, just a few months after the software was rolled out, Meditech faced a public relations crisis that threatened to unravel everything. A team within the company had relied too heavily on Cogniex to make a key medical decision, and the software had recommended a rushed approval for a new drug based on incomplete data. The drug had been fast-tracked without fully assessing the potential side effects. The decision quickly spiraled out of control, resulting in negative press, regulatory scrutiny, and a significant loss of trust from consumers. Elon and Emma were devastated. While they knew CogniX had been designed to balance speed and precision, they realized that no tool, no matter how sophisticated, could replace the human element in decision-making, especially in critical, high-stakes industries like healthcare. It wasn't just about the technology, it was about judgment. Elon was the first to respond, setting up a crisis meeting with the Meditech leadership team. Emma, too, felt the weight of the situation. Though only 9 years old now, she had learned that technology's true power came not in eliminating human input, but in enhancing it. "We have to fix this," Elon said as he walked into the room. CogniX was never meant to replace human judgment. It was meant to help people make smarter decisions, faster. But this situation has shown us that we need to refine the system even more. Emma, standing next to Elon, added, "We've always said that CogniX should be a tool for guidance, not a final authority. We never wanted people to blindly follow the software. We need to make that clearer in our messaging and in the system's design. The software should never override basic common sense or human oversight." Elon nodded. "Exactly. We need to make sure that CogniX is viewed as a collaborative tool, not a decision-making dictator. I think it's time for a change in the system's core principles, a safeguard, something that will force users to reconsider decisions when the stakes are high." After the Meditech incident, Elon and Emma quickly set to work on refining the platform. They implemented a human oversight feature that would require users to double-check critical decisions with a human supervisor or an expert before taking final action. They also updated the system to provide clearer warnings when data was incomplete or when a decision could be high risk. "We need to make the human element more explicit," Elon explained to his team. "The software should give guidance, not make final calls." Emma agreed. "Let's make sure the system empathizes with the user, help them understand when they need to slow down and think carefully, not just speed through the process." Together, they worked to incorporate safeguards and nuance into CogniX, ensuring that it wasn't just an AI that spit out answers, but rather a true partner in the decision-making process. They redefined the way the platform interacted with users, making it clear that CogniX was a tool for enhanced thinking, not automated thinking. After months of adjustments, CogniX 2.0 was launched, with a stronger emphasis on human input, ethics, and caution in high-stakes situations. The shift in perspective, global adoption. Despite the setback with Meditech, CogniX 2.0 quickly regained momentum. As the platform evolved, it began to catch the attention of even more diverse sectors. Educators looking for a way to teach critical thinking, nonprofits wanting to optimize their limited resources, and even governments seeking to improve public policy through smarter decision-making processes. Emma, now 10 years old, was invited to speak at an international summit on artificial intelligence and ethics. It was a moment that marked a significant shift in her role, from math prodigy to global thought leader. The theme of her speech was simple: AI should amplify human judgment, not replace it. "Technology is powerful," she told the audience, "but it's the way we use it that determines its value. CogniX helps you make better decisions, but it's still up to you to apply wisdom. In every decision, there's a moment where you have to choose. Do I rush ahead because it's convenient, or do I take a step back and make sure I'm doing the right thing?" Her words resonated deeply with the crowd, and soon after, CogniX was integrated into educational curriculums across multiple countries. Students began using it to analyze problems in science, literature, history, and even personal relationships, learning to balance speed and precision in their thinking. The journey wasn't always smooth. There were moments when CogniX didn't perform as expected, moments when doubts crept in, and moments when it seemed like the dream of a balanced world of decision-making might never come to fruition. But through it all, Emma and Elon learned that failure wasn't the end. It was just another step in the process. They both understood that the path to innovation wasn't linear. It was full of setbacks, doubts, and recalibrations. What mattered was how they handled those challenges. CogniX wasn't just about solving problems. It was about solving problems together. Through their trials and tribulations, Both Elon and Emma had learned the importance of humility, adaptability, and patience. And in turn, they had created something that had the potential to change the world, not through technology alone, but through the values that powered it. With CogniX 2.0 now firmly established as a groundbreaking tool, the platform had begun to affect not just industries, but entire global systems. The idea of blending speed and precision wasn't just a revolutionary approach to personal decision-making, but a movement that was gaining momentum in the world's most powerful sectors: education, government, business, and even healthcare. Everywhere they looked, Elon and Emma saw evidence that their work had sparked something much bigger than they had ever anticipated. However, as CogniX continued to grow, so did the stakes. What began as a small, personal collaboration between two unlikely partners, one a child math prodigy, the other a tech mogul, was now a global phenomenon with its own challenges and complications. And although the feedback from users was overwhelmingly positive, there were still some critics who questioned the real-world impact of CogniX and its long-term implications for society. It was an ordinary Tuesday when Elon received an invitation to the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. The annual summit brought together the world's top thinkers, innovators, and leaders, and this year, CogniX had been invited as one of the central topics for discussion. The invitation was exciting, but it also came with an implicit challenge. How could they defend their vision on such a global stage, especially with critics who had begun questioning the balance between human judgment and AI? Emma, now 10 years old and a seasoned public speaker, was eager to attend. Her experience at the International Summit on Artificial Intelligence had prepared her for a bigger platform, but this was something else entirely. Davos wasn't just a conference. It was the heart of the global conversation about technology, economics, and social responsibility. The night before they were set to leave, Emma and Elon sat down to discuss their presentation. "We've been talking a lot about CogniX and how it's improving decision-making," Elon said, his usual confidence tempered by the weight of the event. "But we need to address the bigger questions. Will the world really embrace this technology? Will they trust it when it's used in the most sensitive areas of society?" Emma looked thoughtful. "I think the key is showing people that CogniX is a tool, not an answer. It doesn't replace human responsibility. It augments it. If we focus on the value of collaboration, then the critics won't be able to deny that it's helping more than hurting." "You're right," Elon said, nodding in agreement. "We've always said that CogniX should never be a one-size-fits-all solution. It's about enhancing human capability, not overshadowing it." Through their trials and tribulations, both Elon and Emma had learned the importance of humility, adaptability, and patience. And in turn, they had created something that had the potential to change the world, not through technology alone, but through the values that powered it. With CogniX 2.0 now firmly established as a groundbreaking tool, the platform had begun to affect not just industries, but entire global systems. The idea of blending speed and precision wasn't just a revolutionary approach to personal decision-making, but a movement that was gaining momentum in the world's most powerful sectors: education, government, business, and even healthcare. Everywhere they looked, Elon and Emma saw evidence that their work had sparked something much bigger than they had ever anticipated. However, as CogniX continued to grow, so did the stakes. What began as a small, personal collaboration between two unlikely partners, one a child math prodigy, the other a tech mogul, was now a global phenomenon with its own challenges and complications. And although the feedback from users was overwhelmingly positive, there were still some critics who questioned the real-world impact of CogniX and its long-term implications for society. It was an ordinary Tuesday when Elon received an invitation to the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. The annual summit brought together the world's top thinkers, innovators, and leaders, and this year, CogniX had been invited as one of the central topics for discussion. The invitation was exciting, but it also came with an implicit challenge. How could they defend their vision on such a global stage, especially with critics who had begun questioning the balance between human judgment and AI? Emma, now 10 years old and a seasoned public speaker, was eager to attend. Her experience at the International Summit on Artificial Intelligence had prepared her for a bigger platform, but this was something else entirely. Davos wasn't just a conference. It was the heart of the global conversation about technology, economics, and social responsibility. The night before they were set to leave, Emma and Elon sat down to discuss their presentation. "We've been talking a lot about CogniX and how it's improving decision-making," Elon said, his usual confidence tempered by the weight of the event. "But we need to address the bigger questions. Will the world really embrace this technology? Will they trust it when it's used in the most sensitive areas of society?" Emma looked thoughtful. "I think the key is showing people that CogniX is a tool, not an answer. It doesn't replace human responsibility. It augments it. If we focus on the value of collaboration, then the critics won't be able to deny that it's helping more than hurting." "You're right," Elon said, nodding in agreement. "We've always said that CogniX should never be a one-size-fits-all solution. It's about enhancing human capability, not overshadowing it." With a shared understanding of their mission, they prepared for the next day, knowing they would be taking on a much larger challenge than they ever had before. The day of the summit arrived, and Elon and Emma found themselves standing on the grand stage at the Davos Convention Center. The auditorium was packed with industry giants, heads of state, and world-renowned economists. Hundreds of eyes were focused on them as they prepared to present CogniX to the most influential audience they had ever encountered. The presentation began with a video, showcasing real-world applications of CogniX in action. A CEO using the platform to decide whether to invest in a new technology, a scientist weighing the risks of a groundbreaking experiment, and a teacher helping a student make life-changing decisions. The video emphasized the seamless integration of CogniX into everyday life, with its ability to provide context-driven insights that enhanced human decision-making at every level. When the video ended, Elon and Emma walked onto the stage together. Emma, dressed in a smart suit and exuding maturity beyond her years, took the microphone first. "Good afternoon, everyone," she began, her voice steady and confident. "In a world that moves faster every day, we often face decisions that demand both speed and precision. Whether it's making choices in business, healthcare, or personal life, we're constantly balancing the need to act quickly with the need to think carefully. And sometimes, those decisions can be overwhelming." She paused for effect, letting the audience absorb her words. "What we've learned through CogniX is that the balance between speed and precision is not a luxury. It's a necessity. By integrating AI with human judgment, we can make decisions faster, but we can also make them smarter." Elon stepped forward, taking over from Emma with his trademark energy. "We're not here to tell you that CogniX has all the answers. No AI system ever will," Elon said, pacing slightly on the stage. "But CogniX was built to enhance human capability, not replace it. We've seen how it can help people from all walks of life, students, CEOs, engineers, even governments, make better decisions." A screen behind them flashed a bold question. Can AI really help improve human judgment, or is it a step too far? The floor opened for questions, and immediately, the first voice came from the back of the room. A journalist known for his hard-hitting questions on AI ethics. "Elon, Emma," he began, "I think CogniX is an interesting idea, but there's one question that no one has really addressed. What happens when the software fails? We've already seen that it can't prevent catastrophic mistakes, like the issue with Meditech. How do you ensure that CogniX doesn't become a crutch for those who don't fully understand the limits of the system?" Elon, unruffled, replied, "The CogniX platform isn't meant to make decisions for people. It's meant to guide them. Our software is continuously evolving, with new safeguards and ethical guidelines built into it. But ultimately, the responsibility for the decision lies with the user. That's why we've integrated human oversight, especially in critical sectors. We are constantly refining it, and we will never stop improving." The journalist wasn't satisfied. But can a machine really understand the nuances of human decision-making? What happens when users start depending too much on CogniX, especially in complex situations? Emma, who had been listening quietly, spoke up, her voice clear and direct. "CogniX doesn't claim to understand everything. It helps people make better decisions by providing insight, context, and guidance. But no tool, no matter how advanced, can replace the wisdom that comes from experience and ethical judgment. The key is responsibility. CogniX isn't an answer, it's a tool to help guide people to the right answers." The crowd was silent for a moment, considering Emma's words. Then, the tension in the room eased as others began asking questions. There was no definitive answer to the debate, but the conversation shifted from skepticism to curiosity and from doubt to understanding. The audience wasn't necessarily convinced that AI could solve all their problems, but they were beginning to see the potential when used responsibly. By the time Elon and Emma finished their presentation, the summit had begun to shift. The conversation was no longer about whether Cogni-X was a threat to human judgment. It was about how to integrate it responsibly into society. The feedback from Davos was mixed, but largely positive. Several prominent leaders expressed interest in testing the platform in government agencies, particularly in areas where quick, yet informed, decisions were crucial, like disaster response and public health. Others were more cautious but agreed that the idea of enhancing human decision-making with AI had significant potential. In the weeks that followed, Cogni-X expanded into new sectors, helping governments make more informed policies and organizations optimize operations at a global scale. But perhaps the most profound result of the Davos summit was the realization that Cogni-X was more than just a tool. It was a symbol of the future of collaboration between humans and machines. And for Emma and Elon, it marked the beginning of something far greater than either could have imagined. They weren't just creating technology, they were creating a new way of thinking. The conversation around AI and decision-making is just beginning. Do you think AI should play a larger role in decision-making, or should we always rely on human judgment? How do you balance technology and ethics in your own life? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. As Cogni-X continued to grow and evolve, so did its impact on the world. Elon Musk and Emma had succeeded in proving that AI and human judgment could coexist, but they were soon to discover that the true power of their creation brought with it unforeseen challenges. The more global Cogni-X became, the more complex its applications and the consequences grew. While the world praised the platform for its ability to increase efficiency, reduce errors, and speed up decision-making, there was an undercurrent of concern. Some worried that Cogni-X's very success could lead to a future where humans began to lose their ability to think critically. The reliance on a system that could make predictions and guide decisions could, some feared, diminish the human element in problem-solving. It wasn't long before the first cracks in the system began to show. The initial excitement around Cogni-X had been overwhelming. Startups, corporations, universities, and even governments were rushing to integrate the platform into their decision-making processes. But as the adoption grew, so did the fear of over-reliance on the technology. It started with a small, seemingly innocent case. A student named Ava, from a high school in New York, had been using Cogni-X to help with her decision-making in preparing for college applications. Cogni-X analyzed her strengths, weaknesses, extracurricular activities, and even personal interests, providing her with a list of universities that would be the best fit. Ava, confident in the guidance, submitted her applications to the top choices suggested by the platform. However, when she didn't get accepted to any of the schools on her list, she turned to the platform to understand what went wrong. The system, however, had misjudged some aspects of her application. Specifically, it failed to account for her personal essay's tone, which had been flagged by the university reviewers as too formulaic and robotic. Ava, devastated by the outcome, reached out to the Cogni-X team to report the issue. Elon and Emma were both personally involved in investigating the case, and though they found that the mistake was an anomaly, the incident raised a larger concern. What if students, businesses, or governments start trusting Cogni-X too much? Elon asked, pacing in his office late one night. What happens if they stop thinking for themselves? It's supposed to enhance human judgment, not replace it. Emma, now 11, had spent much of her time refining the system and helping guide its implementation, but this incident made her think deeply. Maybe we need to remind users that Cogni-X is a tool, not a final answer. The world isn't black and white. It's filled with nuances that a machine just can't always catch. Elon nodded. Right. But the real question is, how do we ensure people don't forget that? How do we guard against over-reliance on the system? At the same time, Emma and Elon weren't the only ones concerned. A prominent ethics board, which had been closely monitoring Cogni-X's integration into different sectors, issued a statement warning about the risks of automation bias. The statement pointed out that as AI systems like Cogni-X became more advanced, the potential for users to blindly trust AI-driven recommendations grew. The statement read, "While the integration of AI into decision-making processes can significantly enhance human capability, we must be vigilant in preventing the erosion of personal accountability and critical thinking. Over-reliance on AI may lead to decisions made without fully understanding the consequences, diminishing the essential role of human intuition, judgment, and empathy." The message was clear. CogniX, for all its brilliance, could become a crutch. A tool that was designed to enhance human decision-making was at risk of stifling it. As the controversy surrounding the ethics of AI and decision-making grew, CogniX found itself at the center of a global debate. News outlets, universities, and thought leaders from every corner of the world began questioning the moral implications of integrating such powerful technology into everyday life. Some feared that the next generation of thinkers, children who grew up using CogniX, might struggle to make decisions without a machine telling them what to do. Others warned of the job loss implications. Could AI systems like CogniX eventually replace entire industries? Would humans become redundant in fields where critical thinking was once prized? In response, Emma and Elon doubled down on their commitment to ensuring that CogniX would always be seen as a collaborative tool, not a replacement for human ingenuity. CogniX is about empowerment, Elon argued in a global TED Talk. It's not about making people dependent on technology. It's about giving people the tools to make better decisions faster, so they can focus on what matters most: their creativity, their ideas, their humanity. Emma added, "At the end of the day, CogniX can't be the one who decides your life. It can't give you the answers to questions like, 'What's my purpose?' or 'What should I do with my life?' Those are questions only you can answer. CogniX is just here to help you think more clearly about how to get there." In response to the growing concerns, Emma and Elon worked together to create a new framework for using CogniX. The goal was to emphasize partnership between human insight and AI guidance, a partnership where CogniX would never take over, but would support human thought. They introduced new user education modules that would teach people how to use the platform responsibly. These modules focused on the importance of human critical thinking and how to ask the right questions, both when using CogniX and when making decisions independently of it. They also implemented a new safeguard system that encouraged users to pause and reflect when making particularly important decisions. If the system detected that the stakes were high, like in medical, financial, or legal decisions, it would prompt the user to engage in a self-reflection process, asking questions like, "What is my gut feeling telling me? What would I do if CogniX weren't available? What other perspectives should I consider before proceeding?" They hoped this approach would ensure that CogniX would never replace intuition, ethics, or responsibility. It would simply be a tool to support better, more informed choices. The new framework seemed to be working. Over time, people began to view CogniX not as a decision maker, but as a companion, a tool that helped them make sense of complex data and multiple options. As schools, businesses, and governments adopted these new practices, they were able to find a balance between embracing technology and retaining their human instincts. But the debate was far from over. While many embraced the changes, there were still those who believed that no matter how much CogniX evolved, it would always have the potential to be misused. The conversation about AI ethics would continue to unfold, just as the world itself would continue to evolve alongside CogniX and other technologies. As the world's reliance on CogniX continued to expand, so did the pressure to ensure that the platform operated flawlessly. The early successes of the tool had given Elon Musk and Emma hope that they were on the brink of changing how humanity approached decision-making forever. Yet, as with all powerful technologies, there were unexpected consequences. Despite their efforts to emphasize responsibility and human judgment, there was an increasing sense of unease around the global adoption of CogniX. People started questioning whether AI could ever truly be trusted to guide decisions in such delicate areas as health, governance, and education. Even though CogniX had saved companies millions and transformed personal decision-making, it was not without its flaws. And as time passed, the cracks in the system began to show. It all started with a high-profile failure in a major healthcare network in the United States. A hospital system had been using CogniX to assist doctors in making real-time medical decisions. The system was meant to process vast amounts of data from patient records, medical histories, and clinical trials, providing doctors with recommendations for treatment based on patterns in the data. But when CogniX was used to guide treatment for a particularly complicated case involving a rare condition, the system made a critical mistake. The algorithm had suggested a course of treatment based on faulty data, which led to the patient's condition worsening. The patient, a young woman named Lila, was forced to undergo emergency surgery to correct the damage caused by the erroneous recommendation. News of the failure spread like wildfire. The incident was widely reported, with critics questioning the ethics of placing such a heavy reliance on AI to make life-and-death decisions. Many accused the developers of over-promising the system's capabilities, while others were skeptical of whether CogniX could truly understand the nuances of human health. Elon and Emma were immediately thrust into the spotlight. They found themselves defending their creation in a crisis that threatened the very foundation of the platform. As journalists bombarded them with questions, Emma, though still only 11, stood by her side, refusing to let the critics undermine their vision. "I understand the concern," Elon said during an emergency press conference. But CogniX was never designed to make decisions on its own. It was meant to assist human judgment. "We are fully committed to improving our system, and will take this incident as a critical lesson in ensuring that our safeguards are even stronger moving forward." Emma, taking the microphone from her father, added, "This is exactly why we've always said that CogniX should be used as a guide, not a final answer. It's a tool, not a replacement for human intuition. We've already begun addressing the issue, and we will make sure that it doesn't happen again." Despite their reassurances, the public's confidence in CogniX began to waver. Healthcare institutions, once eager to adopt the platform, pulled back, and some questioned whether AI could ever play a significant role in high-stakes industries without constant human oversight. In the wake of the Lila incident, a new movement began to gain traction, the anti-AI movement. Its followers believed that AI had no place in areas where human lives were at stake. They argued that no matter how advanced AI systems like CogniX became, there would always be something essential missing: empathy. The movement gained significant support from influential figures in the medical community, as well as from parents who were concerned about the potential consequences of using AI in their children's education and development. The core message was clear: AI could never replace the emotional intelligence and ethical decision-making that humans brought to critical situations. In a fiery interview with a popular news outlet, Dr. Olivia Brooks, a leading voice in the movement, said, "CogniX may be a tool, but the problem is that it's being used like a crutch. When people start trusting AI more than their own instincts, we lose the heart and soul of decision-making. A computer can crunch numbers, but it can never understand what it's like to be human. That's something that CogniX will never be able to replicate." For Elon and Emma, the criticism stung. They had built CogniX with the best of intentions, believing that technology could make the world a better place. But as the pressure mounted, they began to wonder if their creation was too powerful for its own good. In the wake of these challenges, Elon and Emma began to reevaluate the mission behind CogniX. They had always known that AI could never replace the human touch. CogniX was supposed to be a tool that amplified human decision-making, not replaced it. But had they pushed the boundaries too far? Was the system too ambitious, too perfect, for its own good? The doubts that had started with the healthcare incident grew louder. The skepticism about CogniX wasn't just about its failures anymore. It was about its fundamental role in society. Could they really create a world where AI worked alongside humans in a way that empowered people without eroding their autonomy? Emma was particularly reflective. "Maybe we've been too focused on showing how CogniX can change the world. Maybe we should have focused more on teaching people to trust themselves and not just the technology they use." Elon agreed. "You're right. We've always known that CogniX could never replace the complexity of human emotions and experiences. I think we need to make it clearer that AI is just a tool, not a substitute for judgment or empathy." They decided to take a step back, to focus on rebuilding trust and reimagining how CogniX should interact with the human element. CogniX would still be a powerful tool, but it would be positioned as an assistant, a partner, not a decision-maker. Elon and Emma, after months of careful reflection and consultation with experts across various fields, unveiled a new version of CogniX at a global conference on technology and ethics. The new version would include enhanced safeguards, a greater focus on human oversight, and an increased emphasis on self-reflection when making decisions. The key to the update was a new user interface designed to promote awareness of the human element in every decision. The system would now regularly ask users to consider their own intuition and moral compass before proceeding. In addition, a new feedback loop would prompt users to report when they felt that the system's recommendations didn't align with their values or experiences. In his speech unveiling the changes, Elon stated, "We've listened to the feedback from our critics, and we've learned from the mistakes we've made." The new CogniX is not a replacement for human judgment, but an amplifier of it. It's a partner in decision-making, but the final choice will always be yours. Emma, standing beside her father, added, "We're not just building a tool. We're building a collaboration, a partnership between technology and humanity. It's a relationship based on trust, not control." The new version of CogniX was met with a cautious optimism. While many of the early critics remained skeptical, there was a growing sense that CogniX could become a valuable resource for improving decision-making, as long as it remained an assistant, not an authority. Elon and Emma knew that this was just the beginning. The trust crisis had made them realize that the future of AI couldn't be about blind reliance. It had to be about balance, responsibility, and empowerment. Their work was far from done, but they were determined to get it right, one step at a time. Despite Elon and Emma's best efforts to rebuild trust in CogniX, the skepticism surrounding artificial intelligence only seemed to grow. While some users embraced the newly updated system, seeing it as a helpful tool that respected the need for human judgment, others remained wary. The anti-AI movement was growing stronger, and its message resonated with a broad swath of the public. The group's core argument, that AI could never truly understand the complexities of human emotion and empathy, was difficult to dismiss entirely. One day, while sitting in a quiet cafe, Emma read an article that deeply troubled her. The title, "Can We Trust Machines to Make Life and Death Decisions?" stood out to her like a sharp warning. The piece, written by a journalist who had once been an advocate for AI, now raised concerns about the potential for AI-driven systems like CogniX to inadvertently exacerbate inequality and undermine the value of human lives. She paused for a long moment, absorbing the weight of the words. "Elon, we might be facing a bigger problem than we thought," Emma said quietly, showing her father the article. "It's not just about CogniX making mistakes anymore. It's about people fearing that AI will take over decisions that should belong to humans." Elon sat back in his chair, his fingers drumming thoughtfully on the table. He had always known that technology would never be a perfect solution, but the weight of the growing backlash was heavy. The question of whether people would ever truly trust CogniX, or any AI, again loomed larger than ever. The debate took on new urgency after a data breach in a major corporation that had implemented CogniX as a decision-making tool in its hiring process. The breach exposed personal information of thousands of applicants who had unknowingly been assessed by the AI system. The backlash was swift, with critics arguing that the system had become too powerful and that the algorithm's reliance on patterns and predictive modeling created a discriminatory system that disproportionately impacted certain groups. Though the breach had been swiftly contained and the company apologized, the damage had been done. The public began questioning the ethics of using AI to determine who should be hired for a job, or worse, whether AI could be trusted to decide who lived or died in more sensitive fields, like healthcare or criminal justice. Does CogniX actually improve our decision-making, or are we just creating a world where we let machines dictate our futures? One opinion piece in a leading newspaper asked. It was a question that echoed throughout the public discourse. As the media firestorm around the CogniX data breach grew, Elon found himself grappling with a personal dilemma. His ambitions for the platform, along with the bright-eyed idealism of working alongside his daughter, were starting to feel like distant memories. The trust crisis was real, and no matter how much he believed in the potential of AI to help humanity, there was a rising fear that CogniX could end up doing more harm than good. One evening, Elon stood by the window of his office, staring out at the city skyline. The lights twinkled in the distance, but his mind was clouded with uncertainty. Could he go on believing in the vision he had started with? Or was it time to reconsider everything? Emma, sensing her father's turmoil, entered the room and stood silently by his side. She had grown used to these quiet moments between them, where words weren't needed. They both knew that the future of CogniX was at a crossroads. And while Elon had always encouraged Emma to think beyond the boundaries of what was possible, the reality of the situation was much more complicated than either of them had anticipated. "Do you think we've made a mistake?" Emma asked, her voice soft but filled with the kind of curiosity only a child prodigy could possess. Elon exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "I don't know. Maybe we've been too focused on proving what CogniX could do, instead of what it should do. I've always believed in the power of AI, but now I wonder if we pushed too hard too fast." Emma didn't answer right away. She'd always been more than just a child prodigy. She had become a wise soul in her own right. After a long pause, she said, "It's not about what it can do, is it? It's about what it's supposed to be. CogniX isn't here to replace human decisions. It's here to help humans make better decisions." Elon turned to her, eyes filled with a mix of admiration and sadness. "I've always tried to push for change, to make the world better. But sometimes I wonder if we're going too far. We can't change the world overnight, and maybe CogniX was never meant to change everything. Maybe it's just supposed to help us be a little better, not perfect." The conversation with Emma was a turning point for Elon. He realized that, like many of the great inventions he had brought into the world, CogniX was never about creating a perfect system. It was about finding a way to help humanity thrive without losing sight of the human element. He knew that no matter how advanced AI became, it could never replace the warmth of human judgment, the depth of empathy, or the richness of human experience. It was clear now that CogniX needed to be refined, not just in its capabilities but in its philosophy. The vision wasn't about making better decisions in a vacuum, but about ensuring that those decisions remained grounded in humanity's deepest values. CogniX had to learn from its mistakes, just as people did. It had to evolve in a way that allowed for human oversight, where the ultimate choice was always in the hands of the people who used it. Elon and Emma made a bold decision. They would open source parts of CogniX to invite feedback from a broader group of people, developers, thinkers, ethicists, and everyday users, so that the next iteration of the platform could be shaped by collective input. They would build a community around CogniX that emphasized collaboration, transparency, and responsibility. They would create a system where AI and humanity were not at odds, but partners in making the world a better place. As news of their decision to open source CogniX spread, the world reacted with cautious optimism. It was a step toward rebuilding trust, not just in the platform, but in the idea that technology could enhance humanity without threatening it. People could see that Elon and Emma were willing to listen to the concerns and criticisms, and that they were taking the necessary steps to make CogniX a tool that worked for everyone, not just the few who had access to it. The new CogniX was released to the world in beta form, with updates coming regularly as the community contributed ideas, suggestions, and ethical considerations. It was still a long way from perfect, but for the first time in a long while, Elon and Emma felt like they were back on track, focused not just on changing the world, but on doing it in a way that made humanity better, not less human. Months passed, and CogniX slowly began to regain some of the trust it had lost. The decision to open source the platform had not only opened the door to more innovation, but also allowed the broader public to feel like they had a stake in its future. More and more developers, ethicists, and everyday users contributed their insights, making the platform more adaptable, ethical, and transparent. While the system's technical improvements were significant, the true breakthrough came when Elon and Emma realized something important. The trust they had been rebuilding wasn't just about technology. It was about the human connection at the core of CogniX. AI could never replace the nuance of human intuition, but it could amplify it, empowering people to make better decisions, not by removing them from the equation, but by enhancing their judgment. Despite the positive progress, however, a shadow still lingered. A small but vocal group continued to question the role of AI in society. Would AI always be a tool, or would it inevitably begin to replace human decision-making? Could humanity maintain control over technology, or would the systems they created eventually begin to control them? The Global Tech Summit was an event that brought together the brightest minds in science, ethics, and technology. This year, however, the summit was special. It was hosted in the wake of the CogniX crisis, and the agenda was set to address the ethical implications of AI on a global scale. Elon and Emma were invited to speak about their journey with CogniX, from the early excitement to the painful lessons learned after the Lila incident and the data breach. It would be their chance to share the new direction they were pursuing, a future in which AI was a partner in decision-making, not a substitute for human intelligence. The keynote address was delivered by Elon, who spoke of the promise and perils of AI. He emphasized that while AI could help solve some of the world's most pressing issues, climate change, global health crises, and social inequality, it was crucial to approach it with humility and responsibility. AI is not an end in itself. It's a tool that can augment human wisdom, not replace it, Elon said to a packed auditorium. We must approach AI not as a savior, but as a companion, guiding us through an uncertain future. Emma followed, presenting her vision of the future. A world where CogniX was just one piece of a larger puzzle. We've learned that technology must evolve with us, not overtake us. It's not about creating perfect systems. It's about creating systems that help us make better decisions, even when we don't have all the answers. Her words were met with applause, but Emma could sense that not everyone in the room was convinced. There were still many who felt that AI would eventually overstep its bounds, and some were even more concerned about the ethical implications of AI in areas like healthcare, criminal justice, and employment. As the summit continued, a panel discussion emerged that would highlight just how deep the divide was between those who embraced AI and those who feared it. The panel included Dr. Olivia Brooks, the vocal leader of the anti-AI movement, and Dr. Raj Patel, an influential ethicist who had long argued that AI systems like CogniX could never be truly unbiased or free from unintended consequences. Dr. Brooks argued passionately that the more society relied on AI, the more they risked losing their humanity. AI doesn't have a conscience. It doesn't understand the moral complexities of human life. And yet we're allowing it to make decisions that impact people's futures. This is dangerous, and we must stop it before it goes any further. Dr. Patel took a more measured approach. I believe in the potential of AI to help improve decision-making, but the systems we build must be transparent and accountable. We need to ensure that these systems are regularly audited for bias and that human oversight remains at the core of decision-making. Otherwise, we're opening the door to algorithmic injustice. Elon and Emma were both part of the panel, and when it was their turn to speak, they reflected on how CogniX was evolving. We recognize that AI will never be perfect, Elon said, but we believe in its potential to empower people, not replace them. We're committed to making sure CogniX remains a tool that amplifies human decision-making, not one that replaces it. Emma added, the future isn't about machines replacing humans. It's about collaboration, and we need to keep learning and listening to the people who use our technology and to the world around us. Just when the debate seemed like it was going to become even more polarized, an unexpected voice entered the conversation. Dr. Michael Hayes, a neurologist and AI researcher from Stanford, offered a perspective that caught everyone off guard. AI, he began, doesn't just represent a threat or a promise. It represents an opportunity, a unique opportunity for us to redefine what it means to make decisions. But we have to reframe the conversation. Instead of asking whether AI should replace humans, we should ask how we can use AI to augment human potential. The question isn't whether AI can make decisions better than humans. The question is, how can we partner with it to become better versions of ourselves? The room went silent for a moment. Dr. Hayes' words had a profound impact on everyone there. It wasn't about whether AI could replace humanity, but how it could be integrated into human decision-making, enhancing rather than replacing human intuition, creativity, and empathy. By the end of the summit, Elon and Emma came away with a renewed sense of purpose. While the debates about AI would never completely go away, they now understood that the solution was not about convincing the world to embrace AI. The solution was about creating systems of collaboration, where AI could work alongside humans, amplifying their abilities rather than overshadowing them. It was clear that CogniX was not the end of the story. It was just the beginning. The journey to integrate AI into human life in a meaningful and responsible way would take time, effort, and, most importantly, humility. Elon and Emma were prepared to continue the journey, knowing that while they might not have all the answers, they were on the right path. As the summit concluded, Elon and Emma returned to their headquarters, where CogniX continued to evolve. The platform was now being used not just by individuals and companies, but also by governments and organizations that saw the potential to augment decision-making on a global scale. Yet there was still much work to do. The ethical implications of AI, the issue of bias, and the ever-present need for human oversight would continue to shape the future of technology. But Elon and Emma were committed to ensuring that CogniX would remain a tool that empowered humanity, not a system that would undermine it. The road ahead would be challenging, but they were no longer afraid of the obstacles. They had learned the hard way that true progress was never about taking shortcuts or promising perfection. It was about finding balance and staying true to the principles that mattered most. Despite the renewed sense of purpose following the Global Tech Summit, Elon and Emma were about to face a challenge that would test not only the future of CogniX, but also the very foundation of their vision for AI. It started with a single email. The message came from an anonymous whistleblower, someone claiming to be a former employee of the company that had originally helped develop CogniX's underlying algorithms. At first, Elon assumed it was another baseless accusation or a form of retaliation from those who had never supported their project. But when he read the email, his stomach dropped. The whistleblower claimed that an unintended flaw in the original CogniX algorithm had allowed the system to accumulate and process bias data, which, in turn, had led to discriminatory outputs in some sectors, especially in healthcare and employment recommendations. The email further stated that some of the revised versions of CogniX, even with the improvements Elon and Emma had made, might still be vulnerable to this flaw. Worst of all, the whistleblower warned that this flaw had been deliberately ignored by the development team during the initial testing phase to meet market deadlines. Elon stared at the screen, his fingers hovering above the keyboard. He felt his heart race as he reread the email. His worst fears, the ones he tried so hard to ignore, had come true. CogniX, despite all their efforts to make it a tool for empowerment, might still be perpetuating the very problems they had sought to solve: bias, injustice, and inequality. Elon's first instinct was to keep this discovery quiet, to dig deeper into the claims privately, but something inside him told him that the only way forward was to confront the problem head-on, no matter the cost. That evening, he sat down with Emma to go over the whistleblower's email. Emma, ever the rational thinker, was quiet as she absorbed the details. She was aware of the challenges CogniX had faced from the beginning. There had always been voices warning about AI bias and systemic inequality in data, but this was different. If the accusations were true, it would mean that CogniX was complicit in perpetuating the very issues they had vowed to correct. After a long silence, Emma spoke. "We need to do something about this, Dad. If we ignore it, it'll come back to haunt us. But if we fix it, if we make this right, it could be our chance to show the world that we are serious about making AI work for everyone." Elon nodded, though his mind was clouded with uncertainty. The stakes were higher than ever, and if this flaw was as widespread as the whistleblower suggested, it could unravel everything they had worked for. CogniX was no longer just a business venture. It was a symbol of AI's potential to be a force for good in the world. If they had failed, the public would lose faith in the very idea that AI could ever be anything but a dangerous tool for the powerful. But even as doubt crept into his mind, Elon knew there was no other choice but to move forward with transparency. They would need to reassess the entire system, conduct a thorough audit, and fix the flaws, even if it meant putting everything on hold. This could potentially be the end of CogniX, or it could be its rebirth. The next day, Elon and Emma issued a public statement. They didn't sugarcoat the problem or try to downplay its significance. In an emotional video message that they released across social media platforms, they admitted the flaw in the algorithm and vowed to take immediate action. "We have always said that CogniX is a tool that helps humans make better decisions. But we've learned that, just like the humans who build it, AI is imperfect. It can be biased. It can make mistakes," Elon said, his voice steady but his eyes betraying the weight of the revelation. "And for that, we are deeply sorry. We promise to do everything in our power to fix it." Emma added, "This isn't just about correcting lines of code. This is about rebuilding trust. We owe it to everyone who has used CogniX and to the world to fix the mistakes we've made. This is the moment we take responsibility." The reaction was immediate and intense. Some applauded their honesty and willingness to confront the issue head-on. Others, however, were furious. Anti-AI activists saw this as confirmation of their fears. They labeled Elon and Emma as opportunists who had put profit above the public good. CogniX's credibility, already fragile from previous controversies, was now hanging by a thread. But amidst the backlash, there was a glimmer of hope. Many respected voices in the tech community praised their courage. Dr. Raj Patel, who had been a vocal critic of AI bias, wrote an op-ed in support of Elon and Emma. The true measure of integrity is how you respond when you're faced with your flaws. Elon and Emma Musk are not perfect, but their response to this crisis shows they are serious about ensuring AI serves humanity, not the other way around. The question now was, how long would it take to rebuild CogniX? And, more importantly, would the world be willing to give them a second chance? As CogniX underwent a rigorous internal audit, Elon and Emma found themselves buried in a mountain of data, reports, and expert consultations. The process was painstakingly slow, but it was necessary. It wasn't just about fixing algorithms. It was about rethinking the ethics of AI at a fundamental level. They brought in a team of AI ethicists, data scientists, and psychologists to help audit the system. The team worked around the clock, testing the algorithm on thousands of real-world scenarios to identify any lingering biases or flaws. Elon and Emma also made the difficult decision to pause the rollout of new features, focusing entirely on repairing the foundational issues within CogniX. It was clear that the problem was not just in the code, but in how the AI had been trained. The data that had been used to teach CogniX had come from many sources, some of them flawed or incomplete. In some cases, the AI had inherited biases from historical data that reflected societal prejudices, especially in fields like hiring practices, medical treatment recommendations, and criminal justice. Emma spent hours with the team, helping to refine the system's methodology for data cleansing and ensuring that new training data would come from a more diverse and representative range of sources. It was clear that fixing this would take time, probably more time than either of them had expected. As the weeks went by, the pressure mounted. CogniX had become a symbol of AI's potential to change the world, but now it seemed like it was at risk of becoming a cautionary tale. The Musk family faced not only the technical challenge of fixing the platform, but also the growing pressure from investors, government regulators, and the media. Elon received calls from some of the most influential people in tech and government. The U.S. Department of Technology had requested a formal audit of CogniX's development process, and several international governments had placed holds on any contracts that involved CogniX in sectors like healthcare and law enforcement. The stakes had never been higher. If CogniX failed, it could set back the AI revolution by years. But if they succeeded in fixing the flaws, it could prove to the world that AI was not an end in itself, but a tool that could be shaped for good, even in the face of its imperfections. As the weeks passed, the atmosphere at CogniX headquarters was tense, yet focused. Elon and Emma had faced a backlash they hadn't anticipated, but their determination to make things right only grew stronger. Every day, they worked alongside their team, diving into data audits, algorithm refinements, and consultations with experts. The pressure was relentless, but they knew that if they didn't fix CogniX properly, it would be the end of everything they'd worked for. The process of recalibrating CogniX wasn't easy. They brought in data ethicists from diverse backgrounds, sociologists, psychologists, and economists, to ensure that the system wasn't just unbiased, but also inclusive. The underlying philosophy of CogniX was changing, and so was its architecture. Emma, in particular, worked tirelessly with the new team of data scientists to build a set of checks and balances that would prevent the system from learning harmful patterns from imperfect or biased data. They implemented a dual-layered transparency system where every decision the AI made was tracked and could be reviewed in real time by human moderators. They also decided to make the algorithm's decision-making process open-sourced, allowing anyone, whether an expert or an everyday person, to evaluate and critique its actions. Elon knew this was a significant step. By opening CogniX up to the public in this way, they were not only addressing bias but also giving the world a sense of control over the technology that was becoming increasingly intertwined with everyday life. However, the task was daunting. Emma spent countless nights poring over reports, speaking with regulators, and overseeing the algorithmic fixes. Elon continued to handle the media, speaking at events, taking questions, and offering the same commitment to transparency they had offered in their earlier statements. But even with all this effort, there was still a lingering sense of doubt in the air. Many critics, some of whom were former allies, remained skeptical. They couldn't understand how such a promising technology had gone so wrong, so quickly. For some, it felt like the damage was irreparable. One evening, during a live-streamed public Q&A that Elon and Emma had set up to update the world on CogniX's progress, a familiar voice cut through the tension. It was Dr. Olivia Brooks, the outspoken leader of the anti-AI movement, who had been one of their harshest critics since the beginning. "I have to ask," Dr. Brooks began, her tone measured but firm, "how can you possibly ask us to believe that CogniX, a system that has been shown to perpetuate harm, can now be fixed? After everything that has happened, why should we trust that this version will be any better? You've admitted it yourself. The system was flawed, but you still pushed it out to the public. How can we know that this isn't just another PR stunt, another Band-Aid over a broken machine?" The question hung in the air, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Elon and Emma exchanged a glance. It was a question they knew they had to answer, but it was difficult, especially with the weight of everything on their shoulders. Emma spoke first, her voice calm yet firm. "Dr. Brooks, I understand your skepticism. We understand the concerns. But let me make this very clear. We've spent months correcting the errors in CogniX. This isn't a simple fix. We are fully committed to ensuring that CogniX can live up to the values we promised from the start. This isn't just about fixing the algorithm. It's about building something that can stand the test of time. Something that will be more transparent, more accountable, and, most importantly, better for everyone." Elon picked up where Emma left off. "We understand the weight of the trust we've broken. But if we don't take responsibility for our mistakes, then what kind of leaders would we be? This isn't a PR stunt. This is us, holding ourselves accountable and asking the world to watch us rebuild something that has the potential to change everything, but only if we do it right." The room fell silent for a moment, and while many still doubted, there was a sense of respect for their unwavering commitment to accountability. It wasn't about convincing everyone that CogniX was now perfect. It was about showing that they were ready to go the distance and prove that AI, when done right, could be a force for good. Just as CogniX's road to redemption was beginning to pick up momentum, something unexpected happened. Dr. Raj Patel, one of the most vocal proponents of AI ethics, reached out with an offer of collaboration. Raj had been a longtime critic of AI systems, especially those that operated without proper oversight. However, he had been impressed with CogniX's decision to be transparent and open-source the algorithm. "I believe you're on the right track," Raj said in a private meeting with Elon and Emma. "But fixing the biases in CogniX requires more than just tweaking the algorithm. It requires a revolutionary shift in how we think about AI and its role in society. I want to help you take CogniX to the next level, help you create a new standard for responsible AI that can serve as a model for the industry." Elon and Emma had always admired Raj's work, and the partnership was a natural fit. With Raj on board, they formed a new advisory group consisting of some of the world's leading AI ethicists, sociologists, and data scientists. Together, they worked to implement an even more rigorous framework for CogniX, ensuring that it would meet the highest ethical standards. As months passed, the progress was tangible. The improvements to CogniX were groundbreaking, not just from a technological standpoint, but from an ethical one. The new version of the platform was more robust, more transparent, and far more inclusive than ever before. It had passed independent audits, and several international organizations had officially endorsed it as a model for responsible AI. In addition, CogniX was now used in ways that Elon and Emma had never imagined. It was helping nonprofits make data-driven decisions to combat poverty and climate change. It was being used in education to help teachers identify at-risk students and design personalized learning plans. And it was being used by government agencies to improve the fairness of hiring practices and the allocation of healthcare resources. The journey to rebuild CogniX was long and painful, but it had brought something unexpected with it, a deepened sense of trust, not just from the public, but from the team that had worked tirelessly to make CogniX what it was today. Emma and Elon looked back at the last year of their lives, and while it had been filled with moments of self-doubt and frustration, it had also been a period of growth, both for them and for Cognex. They had learned the hardest lesson of all, that no matter how powerful technology could become, it was always at the mercy of the choices we made. And that, they realized, was the true lesson of Cognex. With Cognex now on a more solid footing, Elon and Emma were ready to look toward the future. They knew that the journey was far from over, but they were no longer afraid of the challenges ahead. In fact, they welcomed them. "There's still so much more to do," Elon said, his voice filled with conviction. "We've just scratched the surface of what AI can do for humanity. We need to keep pushing the boundaries, but we can't forget the lessons we've learned along the way. Cognex is only as good as the people who use it, and we need to build a future where AI empowers everyone, not just the few." Emma smiled. "Together, we can make it happen. We've learned the hard way, but now we know the stakes, and we won't stop until we get it right." Now that Cognex has taken the first steps toward redemption, do you believe that AI can be fixed and used for good? What other steps do you think should be taken to ensure AI benefits everyone fairly? Join the conversation and share your thoughts below. The future of AI is still being written, and you're a part of it. After months of grueling work, the day had finally come. Cognex was ready for its public relaunch. The fixes had been implemented, the audits completed, and the transparency tools built into the platform. Yet, despite all the improvements, Elon and Emma knew that Cognex's true test was still ahead. They couldn't afford to get comfortable. The world was watching. This wasn't just about releasing a product. It was about earning back the trust of millions of people who had once placed their faith in the platform, only to see it fail. It was about showing the world that Cognex could be a tool for good, for equity, and for social change. But could it? To mark the official relaunch, Elon and Emma decided to hold a global demonstration. They invited a diverse range of experts, stakeholders, and the public to witness firsthand how Cognex had evolved. It was a bold move, one that would either make or break the platform. The event was held at a major tech conference, live-streamed to millions of people worldwide. It was scheduled to take place in San Francisco, and Elon knew that this would be the make-or-break moment for them. He had already made a reputation for himself as an entrepreneur who could dream big and often face massive setbacks, but Cognex was different. It represented the future of AI, and if they failed now, it would not only be the end of their journey but a cautionary tale for the entire industry. The stage was set with massive screens and multiple live demos. On one screen, the original version of Cognex was run through a real-world simulation, showcasing its previous flaws. It was stark, a reminder of how far they had come, and how far they still had to go. Elon and Emma stood in front of the crowd, both of them visibly nervous but resolute. Elon stepped forward, addressing the global audience. "This is more than just a product launch," he began. "This is a journey, one that we took with all of you. We've made mistakes. We've learned from them. And today, we're proud to show you the future of Cognex, a platform that is transparent, inclusive, and accountable. We hope that Cognex will not just change industries. It will change the way we think about technology, trust, and responsibility." The audience watched intently, some skeptical, others hopeful. The first demo began. The new version of Cognex was far more than a fix. It had become a symbol of innovation, ethical AI, and human-centered design. In real time, Cognex analyzed vast datasets from multiple industries: healthcare, education, law enforcement, and even environmental science. It made decisions based on data that had been cleansed of bias, showing how its algorithms would improve hiring practices, reduce inequalities in healthcare access, and help governments allocate resources more effectively. The true test came when they opened the floor to live, unscripted demonstrations. Cognex was used to predict outcomes for a group of job applicants from various socio-economic backgrounds, to determine fair allocation of medical resources in a crisis, and even to help a non-profit organization assess how to best distribute aid in disaster-stricken areas. Each demonstration was not only successful, but the results were remarkably fair. There was no evidence of the biases that had plagued the system before. In fact, the improvements were so noticeable that some of the leading experts in the room were stunned by the accuracy and fairness of the predictions. But there was still a lingering question in the air. Could Cogniex really live up to its promise over time? Could it be scaled responsibly? The most difficult moment came when Raj Patel, who had been one of the key advisors to the Cogniex team, took the stage. Raj, who had been a vocal advocate for responsible AI and had worked alongside Elon and Emma to audit the system, was now poised to put Cogniex to its ultimate test. He had been granted full access to the AI's core functionalities and was going to ask it to solve a complex problem. How should a government balance resources between healthcare, education, and environmental sustainability in a nation with severe economic disparities? As Raj typed the question into Cogniex, the room grew silent. The system whirred to life, processing data from various global sources. The answer that appeared on the screen was stunning in its complexity and fairness. Cogniex analyzed economic data, climate reports, health statistics, and demographic trends, producing a comprehensive plan that prioritized both sustainability and social equity. It wasn't perfect. Cogniex acknowledged the trade-offs involved in the decision-making process. But it was a dramatic departure from earlier versions, which had produced skewed results that favored affluent populations while neglecting the most vulnerable. For Raj, this was the moment. As he turned to the crowd, a broad smile crossed his face. This is not just a model of artificial intelligence. This is a step forward in how we can use AI to empower the world's most disenfranchised populations. This is what responsible AI looks like. The room erupted in applause. It was a pivotal moment for Cogniex and for the future of AI itself. Later that evening, after the event had concluded, Elon and Emma sat in a quiet corner of the venue. It had been an exhausting day, full of highs and lows. But as they reflected on the outcome, they knew they had passed the final test. Elon leaned back in his chair, exhaling a long breath. I never thought we'd get here. I was ready to walk away. But you convinced me we had to fight for this. Emma smiled, her eyes tired but full of hope. We didn't just fight for Cogniex, Dad. We fought for a future where AI is a force for good. We fought for a world where people can trust technology again. As the night grew darker, they both knew the battle wasn't over. There would always be skeptics, always be challenges to face. But the hard work of the last few months had proven one thing. Cogniex could evolve. It could learn from its mistakes and become the tool for good they had always envisioned. And as they prepared for the next chapter in their journey, they knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning. The success of the Cogniex relaunch was only the beginning of a much larger journey. While Elon and Emma felt a tremendous sense of pride in what they had accomplished, they knew that the road ahead was filled with unseen challenges. The tech world, the media, and even governments were watching closely. Could Cogniex live up to its newfound reputation? Could it handle the immense responsibilities it had been entrusted with? For Elon and Emma, the hard work was far from over. They were committed to ensuring that Cogniex was not only a tool for good, but one that could evolve continuously to meet the world's ever-changing needs. But as they dove into the next phase of their work, new obstacles began to emerge. Despite the enthusiastic reception at the relaunch event, the media was still skeptical. Headlines like, "Can Elon Musk's Cogniex truly change the world?" and "Will Cogniex really prevent bias in AI?" popped up in every tech blog and news outlet. Critics argued that Cogniex was still too new, that it wasn't yet proven in real-world scenarios. And, perhaps most concerning, some wondered whether the system was capable of withstanding long-term scrutiny or political interference. In the midst of this, a new critic emerged, Dr. Alex Matthews, a well-known AI researcher who had always been critical of large tech companies wielding too much influence over AI development. I understand the idealistic vision behind Cogniex, but let's be realistic, Dr. Matthews wrote in a scathing op-ed. We're talking about creating an AI that's designed to influence policy decisions, distribute resources, and even shape societal norms. That's not just an ethical question, it's a power question. What happens when one company or one individual controls that power? It was a valid concern, and it stung. Elon had always prided himself on disrupting industries, but this was different. Cogniex wasn't just a product. It was shaping the future of how society used technology to make decisions. And no matter how transparent or accountable they made the system, the idea of one company having so much power over global policies made people uneasy. As CogniX began to make waves in both the private sector and government, the political ramifications of the AI system became unavoidable. Legislators from both major political parties in the United States began to weigh in, calling for more regulation of artificial intelligence and expressing concerns about how AI could shape future elections, resource allocation, and even civil liberties. A congressional hearing was convened, and Elon was called to testify. He found himself facing questions he had never considered before. "Mr. Musk," a senator began, his voice stern, "you've developed a platform that has the potential to reshape entire industries, including healthcare, education, and even how governments function. But how can we trust that CogniX won't be used to manipulate policy or influence public opinion in ways that benefit a select few?" The question hit hard. Elon knew that this wasn't just about the technology anymore. It was about power, control, and ethics. How could they ensure that CogniX wasn't hijacked by political agendas or corporate greed? Emma, who had accompanied Elon to the hearing, could see the strain on his face. She stepped in. "Senator, we are committed to ensuring that CogniX is a tool for transparency and accountability. It is designed to be open source, with full oversight by independent third parties. And as we continue to evolve the system, we're working with international regulators, ethicists, and advocacy groups to ensure that it remains fair and unbiased. But, more importantly, we're creating checks and balances to prevent it from being used for any nefarious purposes." The room seemed to hold its breath. Regulation was inevitable, but Elon and Emma knew they had to be at the forefront of that conversation, not in the back seat. As CogniX gained global recognition, Elon and Emma realized that in order to maintain its credibility, they would need to collaborate with even more governments and non-governmental organizations, NGOs. They formed partnerships with global institutions like the United Nations, the World Health Organization, and various human rights groups, working to ensure that CogniX was used ethically and responsibly. However, these collaborations brought new challenges. Every organization had different values, priorities, and interests, and balancing those demands while maintaining CogniX's commitment to transparency was no easy feat. Some governments wanted to use CogniX to predict elections and influence public policy, while others were interested in applying the system to streamline economic planning and resource allocation. There were constant negotiations, compromises, and the realization that CogniX was no longer just a tool for private enterprise. It was becoming a global asset. And with that status came immense pressure. While the external pressures mounted, the internal dynamic at CogniX also began to shift. The company's success had attracted talent from all corners of the tech world, but with that talent came new personalities and ambitions. As the team grew, so did the complexity of managing it. Emma had always been the calm force that kept everything together, but even she was starting to feel the weight of leading a company that was rapidly expanding and pushing the boundaries of technology and ethics. One evening, after a long day of negotiations, Emma sat in her office, looking over the new reports. There were financial projections, legal memos, and endless messages about regulatory compliance. It was overwhelming. She glanced at the clock. It was nearly midnight. As she picked up the phone, she dialed Elon's number. He answered quickly. "Hey, how's it going?" Elon's voice was warm, but Emma could hear the strain in it. "I'm just trying to keep up with everything," she admitted. "I think we might be spreading ourselves too thin, Elon. CogniX is everywhere now. We have so many stakeholders, and it's starting to feel like we're losing our original vision." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "I hear you," Elon replied. "It's hard, I know, but we've come this far. We've made mistakes, but we've learned from them. CogniX is changing the world, maybe faster than we ever anticipated, but we can't let it lose its soul in the process. Let's figure out how to make sure we stay true to our mission." Emma smiled faintly. It was the reassurance she needed. "Right. We'll keep fighting. We just need to stay focused on the long game." As she hung up the phone, Emma felt a sense of clarity. The path forward would be difficult, filled with political, ethical, and internal challenges, but she knew one thing for certain: they couldn't give up now. The stakes were too high, and the world was depending on them. The days following the CogniX demonstration were filled with a whirlwind of interviews, media appearances, and discussions about the future of AI. The public interest in Elon and Emma's work was at an all-time high, but so was the pressure. As global leaders, academics, and activists scrutinized their creation, it was clear that the stakes had grown beyond just proving that CogniX was ethical or transparent. It was now a conversation about power. Who would control the future of AI, and who would decide its applications? Elon had always been a pioneer, but this time, it wasn't just about disrupting industries. This time, CogniX could change the fabric of society itself. As the controversy surrounding CogniX swirled, Elon and Emma were invited to attend a global summit on AI and ethics held at the United Nations. The summit would bring together world leaders, tech giants, and thought leaders to discuss the role of AI in shaping everything from education to economic policy to international relations. Elon was excited, but also deeply concerned. This was no longer just a technology conference. It was the future of humanity on the table. The room was full of high-level diplomats, economists, and tech CEOs, each with their own agenda. The discussions would be heated, and some of the biggest questions were yet to be asked. Can we trust AI to make life and death decisions? How do we ensure that AI is used responsibly on a global scale? What happens when AI goes beyond the realm of business and enters the realm of geopolitics? Emma had prepared Elon for the difficult conversations ahead. She knew that CogniX would face scrutiny from all sides. While the system was meant to provide transparency and accountability, many viewed it as a potential tool for control. The first day of the summit was a blur. Panels ranged from the practical, how AI could help with climate change, to the philosophical, what it meant for AI to make decisions that impact human life. Yet it was the panel on AI governance that left a lasting impression on both Elon and Emma. The panel featured a diverse group of speakers, including Dr. Alex Matthews, who had been critical of CogniX from the start, and Nia Mwangi, a prominent African activist who had advocated for the regulation of AI to ensure it didn't widen the gap between the global north and global south. The conversation quickly escalated when Dr. Matthews questioned the ethical implications of letting corporations build and control systems that could influence economic and social policies. Elon Musk has created something that, in theory, could help reduce inequality, Dr. Matthews said, his voice calm but stern. But let's not forget that CogniX was built by one company, with one set of values. If we don't create an international framework for AI governance, we risk giving one group of people, one company, the power to control the futures of billions of others. Elon bristled, but Emma could feel the weight of the conversation. It wasn't just about CogniX anymore. It was about the future of all AI systems. Who would make the rules? And would those rules be fair? Nia Mwangi, who had been listening intently, took the microphone. I agree with Dr. Matthews, she said, her voice firm, but it's not just about fairness. It's about agency. People in the global south have been marginalized for centuries. If AI is going to be the future of our societies, we need to ensure that the people who are most affected by these technologies have a seat at the table, that they are the ones designing the systems, not just using them. Elon and Emma exchanged a glance. Nia's words cut through the tension in the room. CogniX had been built with good intentions, but how could they ensure that it was truly equitable on a global scale? How could they build a system that empowered the marginalized, the disenfranchised, the overlooked? After the summit, Elon and Emma spent long hours debriefing. They realized that while CogniX had the potential to transform industries, it also had the potential to amplify existing inequalities if it was misused or poorly regulated. For Emma, the challenge was clear. CogniX needed to be adaptable, not just to different cultures, but to different worldviews. If AI systems were going to govern decision-making in everything from healthcare to resource distribution, they needed to reflect the values and priorities of diverse communities around the world. As they sat in a meeting with their core team the next day, Emma presented a new vision for CogniX. We've built CogniX with an eye on fairness, but fairness is not the same everywhere, Emma said. We need to decentralize the decision-making process. CogniX should be flexible enough to incorporate local knowledge, local challenges, and local solutions. If we don't, we're at risk of creating a system that doesn't just reflect bias, it could create new inequalities. Elon nodded thoughtfully. So, we need to create global standards for AI, but we also need to build a system that's localized enough to meet the needs of individual communities? Exactly, Emma replied. This is about creating a global network of diverse stakeholders, governments, NGOs, local activists, business leaders, and tech developers, working together to ensure that CogniX serves all people, not just the privileged few. The next few months were a blur of work. CogniX's team, now larger than ever, set out to build the framework that would allow the system to evolve into a true global platform. They introduced new features that allowed for local adaptation, including customizable ethical guidelines that could be tailored to specific regions or industries. They worked with global experts, from sociologists to data scientists to cultural historians, to ensure that CogniX could adapt to cultural norms without perpetuating harmful stereotypes or exploitation. They created a collaborative board, a diverse group of thinkers from around the world, that would oversee all AI implementations and provide feedback. But even as CogniX became more sophisticated, a new wave of challenges emerged. Some governments, particularly those in authoritarian regimes, saw the growing influence of AI as a threat to their control. In one shocking move, the Chinese government launched its own AI system in direct competition with CogniX, claiming it would be the gold standard for AI ethics, an AI that could be controlled by the state. Emma knew this was a critical turning point. CogniX wasn't just a product anymore. It was part of a much larger global struggle over the future of AI, power, and ethics. Late one night, as Emma sat in her office staring at a globe on her desk, she reflected on the journey that had brought them here. She had always known that technology was a tool, but now she understood the true weight of what they were building. CogniX wasn't just a tool for making smarter decisions. It was a reflection of society. It would shape how people lived, how they worked, and how they saw the world. And as Emma gazed out of the window, watching the city lights twinkle below, she realized that the true test was just beginning. CogniX had the potential to change everything, but it had to be handled with care. The world was waiting, and the future was uncertain. Could they navigate these challenges? Could they steer CogniX towards a future where it would be a force for good and not another tool for exploitation? Emma didn't have all the answers, but one thing was certain: they couldn't stop now. Just as the global conversation surrounding CogniX was beginning to settle into a more stable rhythm, a crisis emerged. This time, it wasn't a matter of political power or ethical dilemmas. It was something far more urgent: a malfunction. Emma was sitting at her desk, going through the data reports from their latest deployment in East Africa when the notification came through. Emergency alert: CogniX global network failure. Immediate action required. Her heart skipped a beat. This wasn't the kind of message they had ever expected to see. CogniX had been running without any major glitches for months now. The system was, after all, built with hundreds of fail-safes, redundancies, and security measures. Yet here it was, an emergency. And it was global. Emma quickly dialed Elon, but it went to voicemail. She rushed to the control room, where the team had gathered, their faces pale and tense. "We've lost access to several nodes across the network," said Amira, the chief engineer. "It's like something is blocking the system from communicating with certain regions. The feedback loops are malfunctioning." "We've never had a failure of this scale," said Toby, the lead data scientist, his voice shaking. "I'm seeing discrepancies in the real-time decision-making model. It's as though CogniX is making calculations that don't align with the ethical frameworks we've built." Emma's mind raced. She had been part of the initial team that helped design CogniX, but even she was stunned by the complexity of the problem. She turned to Amira. "Can you isolate the source?" "It's not a simple issue," Amira replied, shaking her head. "It's like there's an external force, something we haven't accounted for, interfering with the system's functioning. We need to get to the core before this spreads to the entire global network." The malfunction was no longer confined to their internal network. CogniX's influence had spread far and wide, embedded in systems ranging from healthcare to agriculture, from education to law enforcement. As the failure rippled out, governments around the world started reporting strange behavior. Predictive models were suddenly off. Healthcare decisions, which had been automated using CogniX, were going wrong. Agricultural forecasts that had helped prevent famine in some of the most impoverished regions were now predicting crop failures in areas that were expected to flourish. Global markets began to fluctuate erratically. In the blink of an eye, the stability that CogniX had promised the world was suddenly at risk. The world was in a tailspin, and they needed answers. Fast. Emma could feel the weight of it all pressing down on her. This wasn't just a failure of technology, this was a failure of trust. CogniX had been built on the premise that it could make the world better, more just, more efficient. But now, it was causing harm. The very ethics they had worked so hard to integrate were suddenly in question. Within hours, a task force was assembled. Elon arrived at the control room, his face grim but determined. "What happened?" he asked, scanning the data on the monitors. "We don't know yet," Emma replied, shaking her head. "But we're going to figure it out. We'll start with the core systems and trace back the source of the malfunction. We're working with the best minds we have." As the hours passed, a crisis management team from the United Nations and Interpol joined the operation, but it quickly became clear that this wasn't just a simple bug or glitch. It was a deliberate attack, a cyber attack of unprecedented scale, one that had infiltrated CogniX from the outside. Toby and Amira worked tirelessly, trying to trace the root cause. They eventually discovered something chilling. The interference wasn't just external, it was systematic. The cyber attack was targeting specific algorithms within the core decision-making models of CogniX, causing them to malfunction in a way that altered the entire system's behavior. Elon's worst fear was beginning to come true. Someone, perhaps a powerful entity with a political or economic agenda, was trying to weaponize CogniX. As the investigation deepened, two potential suspects emerged. The first was a cyber group known for disrupting powerful technologies for political causes. Known as the Black Network, this group had previously claimed responsibility for high-profile hacks aimed at destabilizing global systems. If they had gotten into CogniX, the consequences would be catastrophic. The second suspect was more troubling, a state-sponsored effort. There were whispers that a particular country, one that had been eyeing the power that CogniX could give to governments, might be behind the attack. Their officials had been involved in subverting AI laws to push their own national agendas, and now, it seemed they had escalated to something far more dangerous. Emma called an emergency meeting with Elon. "We need to act fast," Emma said, pacing in front of the whiteboard. "If we don't contain this quickly, it will spread to all of the systems globally. We have to shut down CogniX before it spirals out of control." "We can't just shut it down," Elon replied. "Not yet. If we take CogniX offline, the fallout could be even worse. We'll lose everything we've built, the credibility, the trust. People will never believe in AI again." "We're already losing trust," Emma said, her voice heavy. "But if we don't stop it now, we risk everything." After hours of debate, Elon and Emma made the painful decision to initiate a global shutdown of CogniX. It wasn't an easy choice, but it was the only way to stop the system from being further corrupted. The decision was broadcast to the world. "The CogniX global network will be temporarily deactivated for maintenance," the announcement stated. "We are investigating a serious issue that has compromised the integrity of the system. We are committed to ensuring that CogniX is safe, secure, and transparent before we bring it back online." For the first time in months, CogniX was no longer operational. It was a terrifying prospect, but both Elon and Emma knew that without trust, they couldn't continue. They had to repair the damage, and fast. Days turned into weeks as the team worked tirelessly to trace the source of the hack and rebuild the integrity of CogniX. The Black Network had left their mark on the system, but their methods were complex. The AI's neural networks had been subtly altered, causing it to deviate from the ethical frameworks that had originally guided it. The attack wasn't just about disruption, it was about control. By the time they traced the attack back to its source, they had learned an invaluable lesson. CogniX was vulnerable, not just to external threats, but to the inherent flaws that came with power. It wasn't enough to build a system that was transparent and open. It had to be resilient to attacks that could undermine its very foundations. The global network was slowly brought back online, but this time, the team had implemented new security measures, more robust encryption, AI watchdogs that could identify any deviation from ethical behavior, and a stronger collaborative oversight process that involved not just Elon and Emma, but a broader coalition of independent experts from across the globe. When CogniX was finally restored, it was stronger than ever. The team had learned from their mistakes, and though the damage had been severe, they knew the system could withstand the worst that could be thrown at it. The world was watching, waiting to see if CogniX could regain its lost trust. But Elon and Emma were resolute. This had been their first major crisis, but it wouldn't be their last. The road ahead was uncertain, but they were determined to guide CogniX through it, ensuring that it could fulfill its promise of a better, more just world. The world had held its collective breath when CogniX had been taken offline. News outlets were abuzz with speculation. Was this the end of the road for Elon Musk's groundbreaking project? Had they underestimated the risks of building such a powerful AI system? Was it even possible to trust an AI with global decision-making again? Despite the public's doubts, Elon and Emma were determined to restore the CogniX system and prove that it could be a force for good. They worked relentlessly, often around the clock, to ensure that every part of the AI was secure and free from malicious interference. But the road to redemption would not be easy, and every step forward felt like a battle against the odds. After the devastating hack, Emma and Elon knew they had to go beyond just patching up vulnerabilities. They had to redefine the relationship between AI and humanity. It wasn't enough for CogniX to be secure. It needed to be resilient, accountable, and ultimately trusted by the people it was designed to help. One of the first things Emma and Elon did was establish a global AI council, a diverse, international group of experts who would oversee CogniX's operations moving forward. The council wasn't just a way to ensure transparency, it was an effort to decentralize control, making sure no one person or entity held too much power over the system. The board included a mix of data scientists, ethicists, activists, and government representatives from across the world. The goal was clear: to ensure that CogniX would be responsive to the needs of local communities while maintaining global fairness. Elon, standing beside Emma at the launch of the council, addressed the gathered audience. "We are here today because we believe that CogniX is the future. But this future is not a future where one group of people controls everything. It's a future where everyone has a voice. We've learned hard lessons from the attack, but we're committed to building trust, not just in CogniX, but in the very idea of AI itself. Our goal is to ensure that this technology remains a tool for the people, not for the powerful few." Emma followed with a more measured speech, emphasizing the importance of collaborative governance. CogniX represents a collective effort, a global effort. What happened before was a reminder that when we build systems that impact the lives of millions, we must be accountable to everyone. Moving forward, we promise to listen, to adapt, and to ensure that this technology benefits all humanity, not just the elite. Their words resonated with the audience, and for the first time in months, they felt the weight of the future lighten, just a little. It wasn't over, but it was a step toward redemption. With the Global AI Council in place, Elon and Emma turned their focus to the next critical task: retesting and redeploying CogniX. The team had fixed the vulnerabilities that had allowed the attack to happen, and they had also added new layers of security protocols and fail-safe mechanisms. But the real challenge was proving to the world that CogniX could be trusted again. The first test of CogniX's new framework came in the form of a humanitarian mission. The United Nations had partnered with the team to launch a new initiative aimed at addressing food insecurity in the Horn of Africa, a region that had faced drought and famine for decades. CogniX would help allocate resources, predict crop yields, and optimize distribution in the region. It was a chance to prove that the system, despite the flaws it had exposed, could still be used to help people in need. The deployment was meticulously planned. Elon and Emma, along with the entire CogniX team, closely monitored every part of the operation. They checked every algorithm, adjusted parameters, and made sure that CogniX was aligned with local knowledge and needs. The results were promising. Within the first few days of deployment, CogniX accurately predicted crop failures and adjusted distribution routes, ensuring that food reached the areas where it was needed most. The system also provided insights into long-term solutions, helping local governments develop more sustainable farming practices. But the most important result wasn't the success of the deployment, it was the public reaction. For the first time in months, people saw CogniX in action not as a threat, but as a solution. It was being used to save lives, and that was something that even the fiercest critics couldn't deny. While the humanitarian mission was a success, there was still a significant hurdle ahead: public trust. The attack on CogniX had shaken the confidence of governments, businesses, and people around the world. Even though the system had been restored, many wondered, could it happen again? Could CogniX ever be fully trusted with the future? To answer these questions, Elon and Emma launched a global trust campaign. They opened up CogniX to independent audits and reviews by a wide range of experts, including those who had previously been critical of the system. They invited global leaders from all walks of life to come and see how CogniX worked in real time. They also implemented a new feature, transparency reports. These reports allowed anyone, whether an individual, a company, or a government, to see exactly how CogniX made its decisions. The reports would highlight any deviations from expected behavior, as well as the reasoning behind each decision. This was an effort to show that CogniX was not just a black box. It was a system that anyone could understand and trust. The world began to take notice. Governments slowly started to reintegrate CogniX into their operations, and even the corporations that had once feared the system's power began to see its potential to improve their industries. There was no denying it. CogniX had become a global game-changer. But with this success came new challenges. There were still questions to answer, particularly regarding governance and control. Would CogniX always be held accountable? Could it be trusted to remain neutral and impartial as it scaled to even greater heights? Would global regulation be enough to prevent powerful interests from hijacking the system for their own agendas? Emma and Elon were well aware of these questions. They knew that CogniX was no longer just a tool, it was now a global responsibility. As the system spread to more regions and industries, its influence would only grow. The future of AI would be shaped by CogniX and others like it, but the lessons learned from its development and deployment would shape the future of humanity itself. I think we've made progress, Elon said one evening, as he and Emma looked out over the city skyline from their office. But the road ahead is still full of unknowns. There's no perfect system. We're just doing the best we can, one step at a time. Emma smiled, feeling the weight of those words. I think that's all anyone can do. We've built something amazing, Elon. Now we just have to make sure we use it wisely. And with that, they both knew. The journey was far from over. But for the first time in a long time, they felt the weight of their mission and their responsibility in a way that was grounded in hope. They had learned from their mistakes, and they were committed to ensuring that CogniX would live up to its promise, to be a force for good, accountable, and responsive to the needs of humanity. Engagement. It's been a long road for CogniX, from crisis to recovery, from failure to redemption. What do you think the future holds for global AI systems like CogniX? Can we ever fully trust AI? Or do we always need safeguards in place? Share your thoughts and join the conversation. The future of AI is just beginning. The months that followed the global crisis marked a period of profound transformation. CogniX was no longer just a tool. It had become a symbol of the future. The world, once divided on the ethics of AI and its potential dangers, was beginning to embrace a new reality. A reality where AI could work for the betterment of all, if it was done with accountability, transparency, and global collaboration. A few months after the successful deployment in Africa, Elon and Emma were preparing for one of the most significant events of their lives, the Global AI Summit. This summit wasn't just another tech conference. It was a gathering of the world's leading experts, thinkers, politicians, and activists to discuss the future of AI and how CogniX could help shape a better world. The summit was being held in Berlin, and the event was packed with delegates from every corner of the globe. Heads of state, leaders of tech companies, renowned academics, and social justice advocates were all present. There was a sense of excitement in the air, but also a cautious optimism. The world was watching, and they wanted answers to one key question. Could AI, specifically CogniX, be trusted to guide humanity into the future? Elon and Emma knew this was their chance to finally prove that the lessons learned from the crisis had shaped CogniX into a stronger, more ethical and transparent system. Elon stepped up to the podium first, looking out over the sea of faces before him. This time, there were no quick jokes or charismatic quips. This moment was serious, and he knew it. He took a deep breath, adjusted his microphone, and began. "We're at a crossroads," Elon said, his voice steady but full of conviction. "We've all witnessed the power of AI to change the world. From healthcare to climate change, from education to governance, AI can be a transformative force. But with that power comes a great responsibility. A responsibility we, as creators, must never take lightly. The crowd was silent, hanging on his every word. When we launched CogniX, we did so with the goal of improving the world. But we quickly learned that no matter how well-intentioned, technology can be misused, can be hijacked, and can cause unintended harm. The crisis we faced was a stark reminder of that. But it was also an opportunity, a chance to rebuild, to learn, and to ensure that CogniX would not just be a tool of power, but a force for good. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. Today, we stand before you with a promise. We've taken every precaution to ensure that CogniX is transparent, accountable, and responsive to the needs of the people it serves. We've learned from our mistakes, and the lessons we've learned will shape the future of AI for generations to come. Emma stood up to join him at the podium, and together, they unveiled the next phase of CogniX's evolution, the AI ethics framework. This framework was the result of countless hours of collaboration with ethicists, data scientists, and international leaders. It would govern not just how CogniX made decisions, but why it made those decisions, and how those decisions could be audited by any global entity at any time. The crowd erupted in applause, but it wasn't just for the new framework. It was for the sense of hope that Elon and Emma had instilled in the world. After the crisis, the world needed reassurance, and they had provided it. The Global AI Summit wasn't just about showcasing technology, it was about setting a global standard for how AI should be governed and used. Over the next few days, representatives from dozens of countries came together to draft a set of global AI ethics guidelines based largely on the CogniX ethics framework. These guidelines called for transparency in AI decision-making, rigorous independent audits, and protections against AI being misused for political or economic power. At the heart of these guidelines was the recognition that AI should serve humanity, not the other way around. The UN passed a resolution calling for the creation of an international AI regulatory body that would oversee the development and deployment of AI technologies globally. This body would work with corporations, governments, and civil society to ensure that AI's growth was aligned with human rights and global equity. It wasn't just about regulation, it was about empowerment. The new AI standards empowered local communities to have a say in how AI impacted their lives. It gave individuals a voice in the decision-making process and ensured that AI systems like CogniX could be held accountable to the public. With the global framework established, the final piece of the puzzle was public engagement. The world was ready for a new kind of partnership between technology and humanity, one built on mutual trust and a shared vision for the future. And for this vision to succeed, the public had to feel like they were a part of the journey, not just bystanders. Elon and Emma launched a new initiative, CogniX Connect, an open platform where people could interact directly with the AI, ask questions, provide feedback, and suggest improvements. It was an opportunity for the public to have a direct hand in shaping the decisions of the AI that was increasingly becoming part of their everyday lives. Emma often led the community outreach programs, where she spoke with citizens across the world, from bustling cities to rural villages, explaining how CogniX worked and listening to their concerns. It was an incredibly humbling experience for her. It reminded her that technology wasn't just about code and algorithms. It was about the people it was designed to serve. We have to remember, Emma said in one of her talks, that CogniX is not just a system. It's a reflection of our shared values, our hopes, and our collective dreams for a better world. And it's only by working together that we can make sure it's a force for good. As the months turned into years, the impact of CogniX was felt around the world. Healthcare systems improved, global poverty rates dropped, and climate change mitigation strategies became more effective thanks to the predictive power of CogniX's algorithms. More importantly, the world began to trust the AI system again. Elon and Emma had come a long way from that fateful day when CogniX had been taken offline. They had learned difficult lessons and faced unimaginable challenges. But through it all, they had remained steadfast in their belief that AI could and should be a force for good. The future of CogniX was uncertain, but one thing was clear. It would be a future shaped by humanity, a future where AI was not the master, but the servant, a future where technology worked for the people, with the people, to create a better, more equitable world. As Elon looked out across the skyline one last time, he turned to Emma. "I think we've done it," he said, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Emma nodded, her eyes filled with hope. "This is just the beginning," she said, "but I think we've made a world worth fighting for." And with that, they knew CogniX wasn't just a project. It was a legacy. Engagement. CogniX has come a long way since its early days, through trials, crises, and ultimately, triumphs. Do you think the world is ready to embrace AI as a partner in shaping the future? Or is there still more work to be done? Share your thoughts, and let's keep the conversation going. The future of AI is ours to shape.